Okay. Top chat. Let's pop out chat right here. Okay. I should be live. Alright. Oh, I gotta actually tell people I'm live. That would help. Hi, if you're watching this from the recorded VOD, timestamps will be in the comment section. Please leave a comment under the individual column 4 who is doing the timestamps. He was a great help to me with that last time, so make sure that you guys thank him. I'm probably going to do this like I did last time, where I just go for it. I'm going to be doing the voices in between chapters. I'm going to take a momentary break to, drink, clear my throat, anything that I need to. In the beginning here, I'm going to be doing a little bit of an impromptu mic test. So, you can skip ahead with the timestamps in the comments. I did, however, find the finalized draft of it. This draft is far more close to what you guys actually have, and thus there will be less issues with the document, I guess, with the consistency of it, because if you were reading along last time, you might have been like, oh, there's some formatting issues and things, or not. I don't know, maybe I notice those and other people don't, so we'll see. Alright, so we're gonna probably wait a little bit. I'm gonna welcome people in because Streamer Jake is coming out again. I miss streaming. It was a lot of fun. I did one of those Twitch streams, one of those newfangled Twitch streams. I played Half-Life 2, and that was a riot, and I'm going to probably do that again sometime. That is also recorded and posted on this channel. So if you are here and you think I'm funny, then you can check that out. If not, and you're here because you're a serious and avid book reader, or just don't know me very well, please don't check out my other stuff. I'm very weird, I promise. Welcome in, everybody. No, Violet, it's fine. I actually don't know how to change that, so oh, no, never mind. I think I figured it out. Okay, I think I got it. Alright, I like how Adam's name comes up as Adam, quote, that one dude, end quote, ya boy. Sorry, I'm not trying to run this like a normal Twitch stream. I'm trying to, because this is gonna be recorded and saved. But how does my voice sound? Do I sound, well, my voice sounds annoying, but how does the audio quality sound? For example, if I speak like this, can you still hear me if I talk really quietly? Or can you hear me when I speak more triumphantly? Could you hear that when I kind of burped in my throat? What if I speak like this? What if I yell? What if I had a gun? What then? What if I had a gun? Not if I talk really quietly. Okay. So about right here is probably the cutoff for it. Cool. All right. I'll figure that out. Hi. I also have something neat that I, just before we start, think would be cool to show you guys, but it might be a little bit of shooting myself in the foot here. So I have taken the liberty upon myself. Is that document gonna open? Yeah. To actually go back into Affinity Designer, become my own editor, and I am actually, this is the raw file of Daydreams, by the way, so what the book looks like. I'm actually going back and fixing all the formatting issues, of which I'm realizing that I can't even show you because a lot of them are fixed at this point. Yeah, I'm just making sure that everything is correct. In addition, I am doing some light adjustments to to, not the story, but parts of it to make it feel better with the times. For example, some of you guys are probably gonna like really actually hate me for this one. One moment, let me show you. In the first story, there's a part where, or not first story, in the first reading, there's a part where some of you remember, actually somebody messaged me on Twitter and was like, oh, is Sunny watching Evangelion? And I was like, no. I'm trying to find it in here. I apologize. It's somewhere. It's somewhere on this page. Hang on. Yeah, right here. Well, there's a problem with that, with Sunny watching Evangelion, which is that Evangelion was released in August 1997. Daydreams ends on my birthday of November 2nd, 1997. There is no reasonable way that Sunny would have been able to be watching Evangelion unless, she's from the future, or at least her TV is. So I adjusted it, actually, and instead of referencing Evangelion, it references the 1980s Gundam TV show, which I think is a bit more in line with me because I am a bit more of a Gundam fan than an Eva fan. I like Eva, it's cool, but, the other thing is that pre-1995, they wouldn't have had cell phones. So when Simon refers to his cell phone in parts of the story that are more in line with the times, he refers to it as his new flip phone. Whereas before 1995, they used pagers. I adjusted parts of the story, literally like word changes, just to be like, instead of like I read texts from Robert, I read like pages or beeps because they called them that. So I adjusted a part in the very, very beginning about Wi-Fi because Wi-Fi wasn't a thing at this time. I'm shooting myself a little bit in the foot here on all this, but there will be a second edition of Daydreams, a like reprinted one with a bit better formatting and things like that. Some like tweaks to certain things. It will not change the story. The first reading of Daydreams that I did is still a reliable and consistent one. Some of you have been with me and have known me for 5 years. There's a very previous version of Daydreams that I did a live reading of that has very, very much changed. So this is not one of those cases. I'm not going to go back and retroactively rewrite my whole story. I just wanted to fix issues that I noticed with it because as a writer, my writing skills have improved. Like, they noticeably have. I said this in the first live reading. It was really, really noticeable to me just how different my writing style was. And how over the course of the story it was like changing and evolving, and also how hard I leaned into the haha, you're not supposed to know what this story is actually about, like sort of angle of it. They're like, oh, you're supposed to think this is a coming of age tale sort of deal, or is it? I don't know. Let's get reading. The chapter that we left off on was the fantastical Miss Cowgirl. The last part that we were at was Simon waking up in Ophelia's bed. So without further ado, if you are here, thank you very much. Let's start. The fantastical Miss Cowgirl. Ophelia's living space wasn't exactly luxurious. Out of all my friends, she was definitely the lowest class, living in a hole-in-the-wall housing unit. It was small, cramped, and the only light came from colored string lights. Truthfully, for a one-person place, it might be cozy. But Robert, Megan, Ophelia, and I are 4 people. When only 2 people can fit on your couch and there's nowhere else to sit, it might not be the best idea to have guests over, let alone allowing them to spend the night. While Megan, Robert, and I tried our best to catch Ophelia up, I looked around the main room to Ophelia's living quarters. Since there was no shortage of things to examine, my eyes kept jumping from object to object. Jars of spices lined the cupboards, which had no doors to them. The kitchen area seemed somehow messy and organized at the same time, from the abundance of clutter occupying most of the space. Ophelia was no slob, that's for sure, and she kept her place in reasonable shape. Still, I had no recollection of arriving here and wasted no time asking Robert and Megan what happened. After you wandered that hand, you mentioned something about Megan's father before passing out? Robert enlightened me. I heard what he said, Megan corrected him. It was very thoughtful of you, Simon. Well, then you threw up again and passed out. We know with all the protesting going on, that we couldn't take you anywhere in public, so we brought you here. Ophelia fixed you right up with some weird medicine she made. I lightly scratched at the stitches on my head as I thought their story over. Well, I appreciate you doing that. I thanked them. And, Megan, I'm sorry I stuck my nose into your business. It's fine, dude. The truth had to come out eventually, she sighed. Well, if Siggy here knows about your dad, I think we tell him about your mother as well. Ophelia tuned in. I immediately felt uncomfortable with the prospect and decided to speak up. Nine. It's fine. Only tell what you're comfortable telling, I suggested. Well, it's no secret Maggie and I have been friends forever, Ophelia began. But we're only that way because we had to be. Life's cruel, Simon, but kids can be a tad crueler. I take it the kid as Auntie Hans didn't treat either of you well? Not at all. When Megan arrived, she was fresh out of Child Protective Services on account of her mother being arrested. Oh, God. What for? I asked. Megan scowled and looked at the floor before showing me her wrist. Domestic abuse, she explained as she revealed several burn scars on her wrist. Dumb cunt would extinguish cigarettes on me. Remember back in secondary ed when I told you it was worse to know your parents and to lose them? Ophelia asked me. I'm glad I never had to deal with them. My father was at least nice to me, I informed them. What about your mother? Ophelia asked. I never knew her. She died giving birth to me. We sat for a moment, somberly recollecting our thoughts. I needed something to break the tension as I stared at the brand on my palm. Hello, Ophelia. Where's your brand? I asked. My what now? She responded in confusion. Do you have any scars or birthmarks on your body? If you think they're related to this whole situation I'm in. Well, I have my vitiligo. Does that count? I don't think so. So far, it's only been in the form of scars or birthmarks, not skin conditions. No, see, I don't. Well, then tell me about Auntie Hans. Who's Courtney? It's the previous tenant of your room. Ophelia and Megan both seemed shocked by my question. Ophelia shifted nervously on the couch before speaking up. Alas, history and irrelevant to the situation at hand, she stated firmly. My bad. See, the masked man mentions that name, I lied. So I thought it was important. Masked man? Simon, what the hell are you saying? The masked man. The man who's been guiding me through all this. He comes around when I'm alone. Ophelia shot a look towards Robert and Megan, who reaffirmed my statement with nods. Well, I'm not telling, Ophelia scowled. That information is not for you to know. Before I could say anything, the masked man erupted from my chest, forcing me to the floor. Megan and Ophelia began screaming at the sight of his disheveled robes and bony fingers, while I was amazed he'd show himself. My plan worked. The mask he wore was over Ophelia's face. Unlike the other masks, this one had only one eye socket, since it was winking. Parts of the skin-colored paint were chipped, which doubtlessly represented her vitiligo. You dare lie to your friend and use my name? He screeched. Determined to find loopholes in your little game. This is a matter of life and death, and for your sins you'll choke on your breath. I never once asked about Courtney, this you know, but you're a liar and a cheat, and it's beginning to show. Simon, Ophelia gasped. Is this the masked man? As I went to respond, his bony arm extended from the robes and grabbed her by the throat.
I wanted to help you, Simon. This much I swear, he growled. But it's clear you're making no progress. You're going nowhere.
Nine, please give me more time, I shouted as his other hand reached towards me. His arm was able to stretch all the way from my neck to where he was standing. I could feel his bony fingers constrict and wrap themselves all the way around my throat, squeezing and choking me. With minimal effort, he lifted me off the ground and held me in the air. My friends were completely immobilized in fear and could do nothing but helplessly watch as everything went dark. I began to feel dizzy and couldn't hold on much longer. As my grip on his arm loosened, my consciousness began to fail me until I couldn't think anymore. When I woke up, I found myself in another body, in another life. I had long blonde hair and was a girl. I appeared to be significantly younger than when I passed out. The masked man helped me close and whispered. The masked man held me close and whispered.
Since you want to understand the name Courtney, you'll live another life as she.
Then my entire reality shifted. I kept my head down, my hoodie up, as I slowly walked back from classes. All my classmates got to ride the bus, but I had to walk. It's not like anyone would have sat next to me anyways. It didn't take me long to realize people don't like you if you're different. If you have a weird voice or accent, you're seen as annoying. If you have a blemish or bad skin, you're seen as ugly. Just so happens I have both. Despite living in Fayette, I had a Southern American accent. The sort of twang you might hear in the western parts of the world wasn't very common here, so even though mine was subtle, everyone could pick up on it. As for my skin, I suffered from a condition called vitiligo. Vitiligo caused splotches in my skin to lose their pigmentation and look weird. I still have it, but now I take medicine for it, wear makeup that covers most of it. Back then, I didn't have the luxury of such remedies. Kids called me a plethora of names, but the one that seemed to stick was Cowgirl. If I'm to be honest, I actually quite admire the creativity of it now, despite how badly it hurt me at the time. Kinda looked like a cow, so the double meaning was pretty clever. As I walked up the concrete steps and approached the door, my heart grew heavy in my chest. Although I lived here at Auntie Han's, I never once felt like it was my home. Heading inside, I quickly shuffled towards the staircase and up to my room. It was at the back of a long hallway that was lined with identical doors. Each door had little nameplates nailed onto them, labeling the individuals who resided on the other side. My door had only one nameplate, reading Courtney Brown. With a heavy head, I opened the door and stepped inside, making sure to shut it quietly behind me. As soon as I was alone, I dropped my bag on the floor and climbed into bed. Staring at the ceiling, I could hear the muffled voices of other children chatting all around me. This house was very old and had very thin wooden walls, so privacy was non-existent. Even the floorboards creaked when people moved around enough. I looked around the room to ensure nothing was out of place. Old wooden wardrobe sat near the door, and my desk rested near my bed. The other side of the room, identical bed and desk mirrored the position of mine. The only personal effects in the room were my clothes, toiletries, and school supplies. Though it was hollow, this room was the closest thing I had to a home, with a labyrinth of others surrounding it. At least I didn't have to share it. The other kids here believed my skin condition was contagious and refused to share a room with me. As a result, I didn't have any friends or anyone to talk to in my spare time. Instead of playing games and socializing, I would spend my time locked away reading. The school library had everything I needed to keep myself occupied, and I frequently checked books out to read. As I grabbed the book from my bag, the door swung open and a small girl walked in. She had to be in primary ed as well, despite appearing 4 years younger than me, since the really young kids weren't allowed here. Her face looked snobby and her eyes were piercing, but what really stood out to me was her gray hair. Had someone younger than me have gray hair, isn't that an old people thing? Why are you staring at me? She asked in a snide tone. I tensed up immediately. Your hair is gray, I mumbled. Yeah, duh. Is this your room? She asked, changing the topic immediately. Yes, I live here. Well, so do I. Sprichst du Deutsch? A little. Ein bisschen. She threw herself onto the other bed, causing a loud creak as the springs absorbed the impact. Aren't you worried I'll infect you? I asked, bracing myself for an insult. What, are you sick? Got cooties? She asked. No, but my skin. She rolled over and looked at me with stern eyes. I watched nervously as she studied my entire body in complete silence. I don't get it, she replied after a few moments. What's wrong with you? My skin, I mumbled again. Yeah, you look like a complete mess, but how are you sick? I told you I'm not. Okay, then what's the deal? Other kids don't like me because of my skin. Other kids suck anyway. I pushed the hair away from my face to get a clearer look at her. Normally I allow it to hang down in front of me to help hide my face from others, but it gets in my way when I'm not looking at my feet. Wait a minute, I know you, she snapped. You're a cowgirl, aren't you? My heart sank into my chest as I turned my face away from her. Yeah, you totally are, she continued. I've seen you in the library. You go to the library? I asked nervously. Duh, what else is there to do around here? I'll play with them other kids. I already said it. Other kids suck. Before I knew it, she was standing over my bed with her hand extended towards me. I'm Megan. You must be Courtney, right? She asked enthusiastically. Or cowgirl. I hesitated to touch her hand, but gave in after she grabbed mine and shook it for me. Although she was younger, she was definitely stronger than me, so resisting the handshake wasn't an option. This was the first time someone willingly touched me for something other than making a joke about becoming a zombie, so it kind of startled me. I ended up dropping the book I had, allowing her to see the cover clearly. Are you reading Shakespeare? She asked as she saw it. Yeah, I mumbled. What, for class? No, I like how they talk. She looked at me with uncertainty for a few moments before her face lit up with excitement. Oh, wait, are you part of the play they're doing at school? She beamed. They're doing a play? I asked. Yeah, it's a Shakespeare play, too. I didn't know. Well, now you do. We sat in silence for a moment before she started talking again. I've only known her for a little while, but she seemed very talkative. So, are you going to try out? She asked eagerly. Huh? But you just told me about it, I replied. Plus, I'm not near pretty enough. I grabbed the book and flipped to a page with a bunch of dialogue, then held it up for her to see. And my accent sounds nothing like the way they talk, I finished. Yeah, but you read Shakespeare, she exclaimed. They gotta let you try out. What if everyone makes fun of me? I'll sock 'em one. She clenched her fist and jabbed at the air, showing off her punching skills. I had no idea why she was so interested in me, but I had never had someone tell me they'd stand up for me before, so I didn't want to lose it. Okay, alright. I'll go try out or something tomorrow, I mumbled. With nothing more than a loose agreement, I'd submitted a friendship that lasts my entire life. That night, Megan moved into my room. She talked so much I couldn't believe it. The entire time she spoke, I sat in silence, happy that someone was finally talking to me on their own. After a while, I dozed off. The next day, I stood outside the school auditorium, trembling with fear. Megan did such a good job hyping me up that I almost forgot I'd actually have to audition for the role. My entire body went numb as I stepped inside. Young girl, over there, are you here to audition? A voice exclaimed from across the room. It came from Mr. Norbert, the school drama teacher. He was a thin man who needed glasses, had no hair, and always wore a tie. I was amazed he even noticed me, as if he knew exactly when someone entered his theater. Yes? I squeaked quietly.
What's that? I can't hear you. Speak louder,
he sang with dramatic flair. Yes, I'm here to audition.
Louder, honey. I am your audience.
Yes, I would like to audition for a role in your play, I yelled at the top of my lungs.
Most excellent. Get on that stage and grab a script.
As I walked to the stage, I felt the eyes of every student and applicant locked onto me. Sweat dripped down my face as I sheepishly tried to avoid making eye contact with anyone. I sheepishly took the script from the podium and realized it was just a bundle of monologues from various Shakespeare plays. Which one do you want me to do? I asked.
It's not about what I want. No. It's about what your heart wants,
he corrected me.
Tell me, young girl.
Courtney.
Courtney! Which one speaks to you?
I flipped through the pages again, sorting them by monologues delivered by female characters. Everyone had gone back to rehearsing or chatting amongst themselves, yet the auditorium was surprisingly quiet. Even the flipping of papers seemed to boom in my ears. What's the name of the play we're doing? I asked.
Mr. Norbert looked shocked that I would even ask such a stupid question. Why, it's Hamlet, young Courtney, he informed me. You are familiar with Hamlet, yes?
A few students giggled and I turned my head back to the script without responding. It ain't here, I mumbled.
Courtney, do speak up! You're on a stage, he reminded me.
The one I want to do ain't in here.
And which one is that?
Act 3, Scene 1. When Ophelia speaks about how sane Hamlet was. Mr. Norbert's eyes lit up behind his glasses. Without saying anything, he motioned for me to continue talking. After a few seconds, I realized he wanted me to start. My heart beat fast in my chest and sweat dripped down my face. I felt a sinking feeling in every part of my body as a few other students turned to watch. No doubt they'd make fun of me. I shivered and gulped, then pretended that I was alone. Oh, what a noble mind, I stuttered. Oh, what a noble mind is here overthrown. My accent kept getting in the way and messing everything up. In my head, I could imagine their voices perfectly, but my mouth couldn't seem to replicate it. I could feel my face turn red with embarrassment. The courtiers, soldiers. I was stopped by the sound of giggling. They were making fun of me already, just like I knew they would. Tears began to well up in my eyes, and my voice started to waver. Hey, shut the heck up! Another voice yelled from across the room.
Excuse me?
Mr. Norbert yelled in shock. I wiped my eyes and tried to see who yelled it, but my vision was too blurry from the tears. Those stupid head Frenchies won't let Courtney give her audition, they yelled again. Stupid head, another kid exclaimed. You stupid one, not me. Come over here, I'll make you real stupid, my fist in your face.
Silence!
Mr. Norbert boomed. The entire room screeched to a standstill. After a few tense moments, he spoke calmly.
Courtney, please continue.
By now, my vision had cleared. My suspicions were confirmed. The culprit of the shouting was Megan, who had come to see my audition. Although I had only known her since yesterday, this gesture warmed my heart. With a deep breath, I calmed down and focused on doing my best Shakespearean accent. Oh, I tested my voice. Then something clicked in me. Oh, what a noble mind is here overthrown, I sang. The The courtiers, soldiers, scholars, eye, tongue, and sword, the expectancy of rose and fair stature. The adrenaline rush wore off, and I found myself staring at Mr. Norbert, who wasn't even listening. In fact, he was scribbling something on a sheet of paper.
Courtney, my dear,
He began as he ripped the paper and held it towards me.
are you available on these days, at these times?
I think, yeah. I mumbled as I took the page.
Great, because you got the role of Ophelia.
My heart skipped a beat as Megan cheered from behind him. I was so flustered. All I could do was smile and run out the door. Afterwards, a kid approached me in the hallway. "Hey, cowgirl!" he exclaimed. Sorry, I don't know how to get your attention." "I'm used to it," I replied cautiously. "I'm Hamlet. Oh, like in the play. What do you say your name was?" "Oh, it ain't important. Just call me Ophelia." "Oh, like to get into character. That's cool." I felt myself blush from the indirect compliment, so I did what I usually do. Turned around and ran. The next few months changed my life forever. Drama rehearsal helped me gain confidence. Interacting with other people helped my social skills. And having Megan around gave me someone to connect with. One night I found myself sitting outside after some kids finished picking on me. They told me I'd grow udders and try to force me to moo like an actual cow. When I refused, they threw an empty milk jug at me and told me to fill it up. I skipped classes and hid behind the dumpsters at school so they couldn't find me. After I finished crying, I found myself reading my book out there and lost track of time. I was quite shocked when Megan found me hiding. "What are you doing back here?" she asked. She sat down next to me. "Reading," I responded. "Biding my time." "Tell what?" "Tell I'm out of school forever and I can leave this here place." "Oh, yeah. You're like 4 years older than me." I shut my book and examined Megan. The way she conducted herself, it was hard to believe she was only 10. I knew nothing of her past, but based on how mature she was, I could tell it wasn't a fun one. "What's gonna happen once I leave?" I asked. "We'll still live together," she reminded me. "So we'll still be pals." "I don't like living there." "Me neither, but hey, we have each other." A quiet flicking caught my attention, and I looked to see Megan lighting a small roll of paper with a cheap lighter. What the heck is that?" I asked. "A Marlboro. It's a type of cigarette," she replied. "Isn't that bad for you?" "Nine. They make me feel happy, so I do them when I'm sad." It was at this point I remembered the burnt up rolls of paper around me. Hadn't realized what they were until Megan lit hers. "Well, do you do them often?" "Something like that," she replied with a puff of smoke. Finally, the day of the play came along, and I gave it my all. It was my one and only chance to prove I wasn't a freak to everyone. I acted my heart out, attempting to truly become Ophelia herself. There was no crowd or stage in my eyes. Only the world of Hamlet. My voice echoed the words of the story, filled with the emotion and woes that Shakespeare intended them to. Once it was over, Megan met me backstage. "That was amazing!" she yelled as she almost tripped over a studio light. "You were like, oh, my posh heart, and like, oh, Hamlet, I'm Ophelia and stuff." Thank you," I replied stoically. Are you okay?" No, I wasn't. My heart was racing in my chest, my head was spinning. Although I was merely acting, something about the role felt so real to me. The rush of feelings in my heart was something I wanted to hold on to forever. Finally, I snapped out of it as Megan waved her hand from my face. "Oh, I'm spaced out," I exclaimed, still doing my Ophelia impression. "Hey, Ophelia!" Hamlet exclaimed. "That was beyond awesome." "I wish I could act like that," another kid said. I looked around and realized that about 4 or 5 kids, including Megan, were circling me. They all seemed impressed by my performance and couldn't stop talking about it. For the first time, I felt welcomed in a crowd. Yet it
didn't feel right. They were only being nice to me because of my acting. It wasn't me they were applauding, but the performance of Ophelia I put on. I knew that as soon as I went back to being Courtney, they'd make fun of me again. I tensed up and clenched my fists. I finally found something that makes me feel happy. There's no way I'd go back to being known as Cowgirl after this. No, instead, people will know me by a different name. I am no longer Cowgirl or Courtney to these people. In this instant, I decided who I really was. I am Ophelia Brown.
Welcome in, everybody. Thank you very much to everybody who's joined. I see everybody in the chat. It says I see chat, and I will respond between chapters. So that's what I'm doing. Aren't I good at this? Listen to my silky smooth voice. And listen to me gulp down Celsius Live Fit drink. This stream is not sponsored. Daydreams is not. Can I get a Marlboro sponsor, please? I would 100%, if Marlboro cigarettes would be okay with it, I would draw Marlboro logos on every single one of Megan's shirts forever. I would. All right. Next chapter. Even if you hide, it doesn't go away. I woke up to find myself sprawled out on the floor, but in my own body again. My clothes had been torn to shreds, yet still clung on to me, as if I had been attacked while I was unconscious. As my vision came into focus, I found myself laying next to Ophelia. I slowly attempted to raise up, before the overwhelming pain kicked in and I had to perch myself against her couch. Her top was torn and missing a button, which revealed more of her chest and shoulder. She wore her favorite shirt. Yes? Sorry, I'll redo that part of the chapter, guys. I apologize. What's up? Yeah, I'm live. What's up?
Sorry.
Yeah.
I can take a bath.
Rinse paid, by the way.
Oh, alright, okay,
Yep.
that's what I was
Yep, yeah, no, it's paid. All right, so this has been an impromptu moment on the official Daydreams. Wait, no, this is official. Is it official? This is the unofficial ebook. This is the okay. I'm going off track again. This is off script, Jake. Hello. All right. Even if you hide, it doesn't go away. I woke up to find myself sprawled out on the floor, but in my own body again. My clothes had been torn to shreds, yet still clung on to me, as if I'd been attacked while I was unconscious. As my vision came into focus, I found myself laying next to Ophelia. I slowly attempted to raise up before the overwhelming pain kicked in and I had to perch myself against her couch. Her top was torn and missing a button, which revealed more of her chest and shoulder. She wore her favorite shirt today, the brown one with the cute mushroom on it. She only wears it when she anticipates seeing her friends. She only wears it when she sees me. On her chest, I noticed a glowing red scar above her left breast. It was about as long as my index finger and was perfectly positioned over her heart. I assumed her brand finally revealed itself, so I reached out for it with my branded hand. To my surprise, the glow didn't take to my hand, but instead my chest, and an overwhelming amount of pain surged through me. I found myself floored again, grabbing at my chest as blood dripped from a newly formed wound that was identical to hers. While reeling in pain, the masked man appeared once again. This time he grabbed me by the collar and lifted me into the air until I was level with his mask.
I told you once, and I'll tell you again. This is not a game, but a means to an end, he lectured me. You walked in the shoes of the one named Courtney. Now there's only one left. Do not disappoint me. As I gasped in pain, he threw me to the ground. I hit my head, sending my whole body into shock. My ears began to ring and my vision went blurry, but only for a moment before I realized I was in an interrogation room and the lights had just come on. The light in front of me was a metal desk with a bright light hanging above it. There didn't appear to be anything covering the light, so it was extremely bright. Simon Olympus, the interrogator spoke, you have been given numerous opportunities to tell us the truth. Why won't you cooperate? I couldn't see the interrogator since the light was shining directly into my eyes. As I tried to raise my hand to block the light, I realized they were restrained. In fact, my whole body was restrained, including my head. You claim a masked man guided you to this point, yet you have no proof of such a man existing, the interrogator continued. I wanted to open my mouth and speak, but even that was restrained somehow. All I could do was make grunts and try to form words in my throat. Please, we can't help you unless you give us something to work with, he continued, ignoring my grunts. Suddenly, I felt a splitting pain in my skull, forcing my eyes to roll back. The pain was so intense that it forced me to try my hardest to break free of the restraints, like a primal urge. I shook back and forth, grunting and wailing in pain. He's relapsing! Nurse! Nurse! Get in here! The interrogator yelled over my moans. The last thing I remember seeing was more people entering the cell. When I woke up once more, I found myself still on the floor next to Ophelia. She had sat up at this point and was examining her open wound with her phone camera. Blood poured down her body and into her lap. I tried to get up, but found myself completely paralyzed while my body was still waking up. Pardon me. Is this how you get what you want, Simon? She asked solemnly. Is this why your family is so feared? Courtney, I mumbled. I didn't give you permission to call me that. I didn't give you permission to go snoop around inside my fucking head either. I'm sorry. I could see a light trickle of tears on her face, causing her makeup to run. Sure, Simon. You're only sorry once you get hurt. But when it hurts others, you don't care none. She sobbed. I know, feel it, please. I didn't mean for anyone to get hurt. She locked her phone inside before scowling at me. Of course you never mean it to, but that don't mean it doesn't happen, she stated. And now you've really done it, killing a man and whatnot. I didn't kill anybody. I don't even know what... Sorry, I need a drink. Cottonmouth. I didn't kill anybody. I don't even know what the fuck is happening. You have to believe me, I pleaded. Okay, Simon, let's say I do. Now I'm an accomplice. They're going to search the place. You know the sorts of drugs I have kept here? Finally regaining my strength, I pulled myself together and sat upright. Nobody's going to search your place, Ophelia. I'll make sure of it, I reassured her. Oh, sure. You'll use your dark magic shit to ruin them too, I'll bet. She scoffed. I don't have magic powers, that's preposterous. Simon, the grim goddamn Reaper just destroyed my house, ripped our clothes to shreds, forced me to relive your life, and permanently scarred my body. Such was the masked man. I guess he's not so much on our side as I thought. I pulled myself towards the couch and sat next to her on the floor. I didn't bother saying anything since I knew it wouldn't help the situation. She really believed me to be such an evil figure, I knew nothing would convince her otherwise. I'm sorry, Ophelia. I spoke up. I'm sorry that you've been living behind a mask for so long. And as your friend, I never even realized it. That's the thing about a mask, Simon, she stated. If you wear one well enough, it becomes your normal face. Do you think I wear a mask? So that I'm actually some scheming evil person who wants nothing more than power? She hesitated for a moment before letting her guard down. No, I don't, she whispered. You're just a troubled man, with devil's luck and Satan himself betting on your downfall. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything, just come here. I shuffled closer to her and rested my head on her shoulder. The wound on my head was throbbing and the pain hadn't entirely let up. To my surprise, she gently grabbed my head and put it in her lap. So there I sat on my side, with my head in her lap. She gently stroked my hair, carefully avoiding my stitches, and as we sat in tattered clothes, I spaced out and finally relaxed for the first time since this nightmare began. She didn't say anything, but I could tell her mind was lost in thought. It's gonna be all right, Simon, she whispered. The stars told me it will. I could feel my eyes growing heavier as I felt increasingly tired. My stomach still churned occasionally, and my ears rang with tinnitus. The newly formed scar on my chest burned my heart, and if I inhaled too quickly, my entire body hurt. Still, somehow I found comfort in laying with her. Unlike Megan or Sunny, she was such a tender soul, with a gentle touch. I could feel the blood dripping from her chest, running onto my head, and yet she still kept running her hand through my hair. Concerned for her sake, I finally raised my head from her lap and sat upright. Ophelia, I muttered, I'll fix this, okay? I'll fix all of this. Her eyes slowly rolled towards me before she spoke. I know you will, Siggy, she responded. Having regained some more of my strength, I slowly and carefully stood upright and pulled my phone out of my pocket. Hadn't been charged since the other day, but somehow the battery had about 30% left. I flipped open the phone to see a flood of notifications, mostly from Sunny. Missed calls and texts poured in from her contact name, filling my inbox immediately. She had no idea where I was for the past few days and was incredibly worried about me. After reading her messages, which only grew in desperation the more recent they became, I texted her a reply telling her that I needed to explain what's been happening in person. I told her I would meet her at her house as soon as I could and that I needed her help with life right now. Something in me wanted to tell her more, but I decided to save it until we met up. As I finished typing, I asked Ophelia if I could use her shower and helped her stand up. We tracked blood through her room and into her bathroom, which was lit only by a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. She turned the shower on and I closed my eyes, soothed by the warm mist and sounds of running water. When I reopened them, I was once again sitting at the interrogation table. This time, however, there was no interrogator, and I was completely unrestrained. I examined my palm to check that the brand on my hand still existed. After a moment, my ears began ringing, and a splitting pain ran through my skull. I pressed my head onto the desk and covered my ears to the best of my ability. Through the ringing in my hands, I could hear Sunny's voice. "Simon, why?" she asked me. "Why did you do this?" For some reason, I couldn't move. I just gripped my ears tighter in an attempt to block the noise. "You're not a murderer, right?" she continued. "So just tell them the truth. Why are you dragging this out for?" The room began to spin around me as I closed my eyes. "Simon, answer me. Come on, I'm your best friend," she pleaded. "You can tell me what you're so afraid of, dude." I couldn't bear the noise anymore. I shot upright in the chair and shouted at her, "I didn't murder anyone!" But I was no longer in the interrogation room. I was laying down in Ophelia's shower. I looked at the shower head and watched as the water drizzled over my body. Since I hadn't eaten anything in a few days, my stomach rumbled even more under the warm pressure of the beating water drops. Truthfully, I haven't had much of an appetite after Megan's brand. Ugh. My eyes rolled from the shower head to the side of the tub where Ophelia sat outside. She was wearing a fresh set of underwear and had gauze wrapped over a small cloth on her chest to stop the bleeding. I watched as she rubbed soap into the scar on my chest. "When was it my turn to shower?" I asked groggily. "You fell asleep sitting on my toilet," she whispered. "I thought you bled out for a minute." "I've probably lost a lot of blood," I responded softly. "That soap stings, by the way." "It's antibacterial, so we don't get infections." "Any sign of Megan or Robert?" "They left while you were unconscious earlier, before the cuts formed." "Ophelia, I don't know what's causing them." "Me neither, Simon. Even with the scar, you have a pretty chest." She dug her finger into the wound on my chest, sending a sharp bolt of pain across my body. I yelped like a dog from the shock, which You admittedly helped wake me up. And that's for scarring my beautiful body, she reprimanded. Yeah, I deserve that, I groaned. But Ophelia, I can't dodge this forever. I saw your past. I lived your past. I don't know how I did it, but it happened. So did I. And I don't much appreciate you for making me do so. That was a huge invasion of our privacies. Well, you know, I'm actually glad I did. It gave me a lot of respect for you, I explained. You're a tough girl with a heart of gold. You're just saying that. I sat upright in the shower, gently moving her hand off me. Knight, I'm not, I continued. See, that's the thing. Everyone just assumes I say things without meaning them. But I do actually mean them. I lived your life in a flash, and I experienced your life as if I were you. I know that you're an incredible person, even if you don't believe it. I paused for a moment and looked at my palm. My father told me that I would do great things, Ophelia, I informed her. He told me that the heart was our source of greatness. I always thought he was lying. But through all of this, I can tell that you are great. You have that greatness deep in your heart. And you know as much as I do. You just mask it. Because not everyone's worthy of your greatness. She looked at me for a moment while I rubbed my head. Then, without warning, she stuck her head in the shower and kissed my cheek. What was that for? I asked. Because you're finally figuring it all out, she giggled. Danke, Ophelia. For being my friend and sticking with me. She smiled and stood up, then turned off the shower. Come on, Siggy, she said as she grabbed my hand. Let's get you dressed. As I dried off, I informed her of my response to Sunny. I felt terrible about leaving Sunny in the dark on everything for so long, but I didn't exactly have a choice. She'd already responded to my text, letting me know that it's okay if I took my time and that she'd be waiting for me whenever I'm ready. Ophelia ran my clothes through the laundry during our shower, and although my shirt was tattered, I was surprised to find my pants were relatively unscathed. While I got dressed, I called Robert to fill him in on what happened. So now you have another brand? He confirmed. Somehow, I don't think this one is a brand. It hasn't healed up or anything, I explained as Ophelia wrapped my chest in gauze. It's only now finally stopped bleeding. And you think all of this is a test of your humanity? If I asked, would these brands be associated with my friends? Clearly there's an aspect to my relationships with each of you that needs to be resolved, and a lesson I'm required to learn from each. Okay, Simon, I'll bite. What was my lesson? I believe it to be breaking the traditions of our families, I explained. You know what? That actually makes sense. It always pissed me off that you'd never allowed me into the manor, despite it being some stupid rules that even you said you hated. He responded. I set him on speaker as I slipped one of Ophelia's shirts on. It was an actual t-shirt that fit surprisingly well. Apparently she outgrew it in the chest area, and it was too restrictive to wear. A cute slice of watermelon decorated the front of it. What about Megan? He asked. Well, I realized that I had to be honest about my intentions, especially if they involved my friends. I responded. I also learned a little bit about who I should and shouldn't make promises to. Robert paused for a second. Well, you've really matured, cuz, he chuckled. Do you have any idea of what you're going to say to Sonny? Yeah, I have some ideas, I informed him, some of which involve asking for their lawyer. I'm surprised the police haven't come for you yet. Honestly, I'm surprised I'm even alive. I chatted a bit more with Robert before eventually saying goodbye and hanging up. Feeling revitalized, I was confident that I could properly explain to Sunny what I've been going through and figuring out what aspect of our relationship I had to resolve. Ophelia suggested I wear one of her hoodies to help lay low on my way to Sunny's, and even offered to accompany me. I agreed to both and donned a hoodie before heading out. Fortunately for me, this whole nightmare is starting to get better. Chapter end.
Oh, forgive me. My foot fell asleep. Actually, my left butt cheek and foot fell asleep midway through that. That's why I keep gasping. I hope you guys couldn't hear that. Just give me 1 second. I have to I have to stretch out a little bit. Yeah, so, you know what a real sin that I've committed is? At no point have I drawn Simon all bloodied up and wrapped in, gauze and stuff, wearing the cute watermelon shirt. I know, I'm evil. I'm horrible, I'm heinous. There's a lot of things I want to draw with these characters, but... Okay. Next chapter. A walk down Crazy Street. Had I known that Sunny would squeeze me as hard as she did, I would have better prepared myself. Almost immediately as I rang her doorbell, I was enveloped in a massive hug that nearly popped my back. She'd clearly been waiting by the door for me. My groans must have alerted Ophelia of my discomfort because she spoke up rather quickly. Sonny, I don't think you should be hugging Siggy that tight, she suggested. He's had a very rough time. With that, Sunny released me and I was able to breathe once again. I took a steady breath, which was polluted by the cigarette Ophelia lit on the way here.
Well, I'm sorry, Sims, but I was so worried about you,
Sunny exclaimed.
I knew something was wrong when you didn't answer my first text, so I followed Megan to the manor. There were people protesting, and I lost track of her in the crowd.
Yeah, Jermaine has his hands full with crowd control, I informed her. I've been so busy dealing with that shit that I hadn't seen him since I got back here. We should get Simon inside, Ophelia interrupted. The poor guy had issues walking here. She was right. I was very weak at the moment, but didn't want it to show. Well, that and I don't want to draw much attention to your house, I shrugged. There's a reason I'm wearing a hoodie, after all. After extinguishing her cigarette, Ophelia helped me inside, where I promptly pulled a chair from the kitchen table and sat down. For the first time since all this began, I felt I could actually eat something and keep it down. I asked Sunny for something easy, like toast or crackers. She hastily grabbed me a box of saltines. Realizing that giving me salty food with no drink was the best idea, she also filled a glass of water from the fridge. Slowly, I nibbled on the crackers, carefully chewing them as thoroughly as possible before swallowing. I could tell Sunny was practically ready to burst from impatience, so I held my hand up to signal that I needed a moment. After swallowing my fourth cracker, I began to explain my situation to the best of my ability. Showed her the brand on my palm, and Ophelia showed the gauze on her chest, helping confirm my story. Sunny, you must believe I'm innocent, I pleaded as I finished my explanation. I didn't kill anybody. My family curse is trying to frame me.
Relax, I believe you,
she agreed.
But you need some sort of proof or alibi.
I know, I'm working on it, but I honestly cannot remember what happened. Anytime I try to think about it, my head hurts.
I'm sure it's like a misunderstanding or something, and you're just conked up in the head.
That's what I hope. From there, I explained how Robert and Megan had brands that existed before this, and how Ophelia's brand only formed recently. Must have done a pretty decent job because she caught on quickly.
Oh, remember when I fell off that log and hit my chin? Way back in secondary ed?
She asked. I think so, but you don't have any scarring on your face or chin, I responded.
Oy, that's true. All about that one time, I slipped and scraped my leg on that thorn bush.
Is there a scar on your leg?
Huh. None?
Like I said earlier, Ophelia's brand only formed today, so maybe you don't have it yet. Ophelia stepped forward and sat across from me at the kitchen table. It was like watching a movie of Simon's life, but I wasn't me. She sighed. It was haunting, to say the least. Wait, you were watching as I went through that? I asked in confusion. How'd that work?
I don't know, Simon. How do you relive my life?
Okay, that's fair. Sunny sat down next to me and stole a cracker from the box. As she stuffed it into her mouth, I felt my head begin to spin and my vision faded. At this point, my mental state might have not been the best.
Please not now. Not too soon, I thought to myself on loop as I felt my body be whisked away. My calm attempts at holding on to consciousness rapidly devolved into shouts of despair as I felt that familiar pain rush through my skull. Why couldn't this hallucination process, whatever it is, be less painful? Sure enough, when I opened my eyes, I was no longer sitting at the kitchen table with Ophelia and Sunny, but sitting on a metal bed in a prison cell. My face had a beard and my hair was much longer. I felt weak and had trouble breathing. So I raised my shirt to check what was wrong. To my surprise, I was disgustingly thin. My ribs were almost entirely visible, and it was clear I hadn't eaten in a very long time. I began to cough and hack profusely due to the hunger pangs. As I coughed, the masked man stepped into my cell.
You die in here, after only a few years,
he explained.
All the news of your deed disappears. Your name is forgotten, remembered only as Olympus. Then you will truly become another one of us.
What did I do to deserve this? I begged.
Have you come this far and really don't know? After everything you've seen, I've not much left to show.
Show me exactly what I did wrong. If I truly murdered a man, then show me.
The man isn't dead, Simon. How is this not clear? His life is affected by the choices made here. You can continue forth in an attempt to save him. The alternate path turns your future quite grim.
I've almost figured it out, I boasted. I just have Sunny left until I complete your little riddles and fill my brand.
I'll admit I'm impressed by what you've learned. Do not undersell the chance that you've earned. You were right about intentions with your friend Megan. With Ophelia you struggled, but learned in the end.
So I was right after all. He extended his hand and unraveled his bony fingers.
Now it is time for the girl, who's as bright as the sun,
he informed me.
Don't mess this one up. She's the very last one.
I feebly reached out and touched his hand. This time I actually expected the blinding light that shined in my eyes. With confidence high, I stood prepared for whatever Sunny's passed through at me. When I opened my eyes, I expected to be in Sunny's body. But I wasn't. Instead, I stood above a young Sunny Rabelaisian, who was no older than 10. My body was completely clear, yet I could still sense it, as if I were invisible. We were standing in a room, but she didn't seem to notice me at all. I tried to address her, but any attempt at communication was completely ignored. Guess I was actually invisible. Her room seemed so much tidier than it was now. Things were actually organized and put away instead of randomly strewn about. I'll admit that spectating my best friend was way less weird than reliving her life, and I immediately grew cautious of the masked man's intentions. Sunny sat on the floor of her room, playing with a plush frog toy. After a few moments, her father entered. He has short brown hair that was combed back and a thin mustache to match it. Being only 32 years at the time, he had no wrinkles, and in his face, and a soft complexion to prove his youth. I could tell he was nervous. They spoke only French, which I will try my best to translate. Please understand, I am not entirely fluent in French, so my translations might be rough. Sunshine, he greeted her in his native tongue. How is your new room? It is good, Dada, Sunny cooed. This is our new home, sweetie. Best get used to it, because we're going to have a lot of fun here. He bent down and rustled Sunny's hair. It wouldn't take a genius to figure out that Sunny inherited his playful nature. Is Mom gone for now? Oh. Apologies. Is Mom... Is Mom gone for good now? Sunny asked. You do not have to worry about her anymore. Dad is going to handle it. He smiled. I do not like Mom very much. She never let me watch TV. Oh, honey, I will let you watch as much TV as you want. We can go watch it now if you like. Okay. He reached out and tapped her lightly on the nose, then lifted her up and walked alongside her to the kitchen.
Her house was not very different compared to how it looks now. The absence of beanbags and gaming consoles was surprisingly the most egregious change. I was surprised to see that most of the furniture hadn't moved.
Dada, why didn't we live in Mom's house?
Sunny asked abruptly.
Because Mom, gave it to us.
Her father replied as he dragged a chair over to the TV.
Oh, why did she give us the house?
Because she did not need it anymore. And she knows that a growing young girl needs a house.
Why?
Let us stop asking questions now, okay, honey?
Why?
Because it's TV time.
Sunny hopped onto the kitchen chair and watched cartoons played on the TV. Similar to how she watches TV now, once her eyes met the screen, she was completely entranced by the show. Her father watched a minute of the cartoon before grabbing some papers from the kitchen table and heading into his room. Once inside, he pulled out his phone and dialed the number on the papers. The phone rang a few times before an answering machine picked up.
Hey, Smitty, I just wanted to thank you again for helping us settle that lawsuit,
he dictated.
I've no doubt that things will be hard moving forward, but I really appreciate your help with custody of Sunny. Please call me back when you get this message.
After hanging up, he sighed. I knew that Sunny wasn't fond of her mother and began to put two and two together. Suddenly there was a knock on his door. I expected him to answer, but he seemed completely oblivious to the noise. For some reason, something compelled me to reach out for the door handle. As I opened it, Sunny pushed the door open. The adult Sunny, not the child.
Simon, what the fuck are you doing in my father's room?
She asked in shock.
I know about your mother, I blurted.
This is her house, isn't it? Oui, it was at one point. I thought you said you had to use the restroom. Why are you snooping around in here?
I looked back and realized that her dad was gone and I was completely visible again.
I think that's a part of the test, I explained.
The masked man showed me your father calling a lawyer. I think I need to see the lawyer your father used.
Simon, whoa.
Sunny snapped.
You cannot snoop around in here.
I might need to, for the test. There might be something important in your life that I need to understand.
Please stop, you're acting weird.
Sunny began backing up, and it was clear that I was jumping the gun a bit. I took a step towards her to try to explain myself.
Nine, you see, I had to learn about Megan's father, I explained. I didn't know he had molested her as a child, and I made him a promise while I was in prison, and I...
What? Megan was what?
She interrupted.
Yeah, and the first test is being truthful with my intentions, which is why I'm telling you about what I'm doing.
D'accord, but that doesn't mean I'm going to give you my permission to look through my dad's stuff.
With Ophelia, I learned about...
Stop! Simon, you're freaking me out. Stop telling me intimate stuff about her friends.
I have to understand their past so I can save the man they're accusing me of murdering.
Sunny backed up even further.
Simon, listen to yourself, she commanded. Do you know how actually insane you sound right now?
I know it sounds crazy, but it's true, all of it, I contested. So please help me understand the meaning of your test. Do I need your father's lawyer, or is it something about your mom?
Sunny backed all the way up to her bedroom door and grabbed the handle.
Simon, you're actually scaring me right now, she quivered. What happened to you in the past few days? Why are you like this?
Nine, I'm not trying to scare you, Sunny. I'm trying to understand. Please help me understand.
As she turned around to grab the door, I reached forward and grabbed her shoulders. When I did, I realized I wasn't holding Sunny, but instead the back of the masked man. It happened in the blink of an eye and shocked me to my core.
What? I stammered.
How do you not understand, Simon?
The man asked.
The girl is afraid of you.
For some reason, he didn't rhyme anymore, which is incredibly unsettling.
You constantly take advantage of others, Simon, he continued. You act on impulse, with no regard for your future.
Then he split into two versions of himself, which both turned to face me.
You constantly dig and dig with no regard for the feelings of others,
they spoke in unison. Then, from the two of them, they split into four and began surrounding me. I tried backing up towards a wall, but realized there was nothing behind me anymore.
You never acted with malice, but you never acted with care either,
they whispered as one. From four, they split into eight.
all encircling me.
Now answer us this, Simon, and tell us the truth,
They screeched.
we're running out of time.
My ears began ringing as my head split with overwhelming pain. I began yelling and thrashing violently, unable to control myself. As I struck the masked man, I felt everything go numb. Everything began falling apart around me. I closed my eyes and wished for this part to be over fast. I was so close to figuring it out. I just needed to focus. When I returned to my senses, I sat on the floor of Sonny's kitchen, leaning back against the refrigerator. The kitchen table was flipped, and the chairs were knocked over, similar to what happened at Ophelia's. Sonny stood away from me, with a look of complete and utter mortification on her face. She was shirtless and had a glowing red U shape carved under her left breast. It went down about 4 inches before curving back up, as if it were an incision made by a doctor. She trembled in fear as I slowly raised my branded hand. "Sonny," I groaned. "Brand." Blood poured from her and dripped down her body and leg. "Don't move," I trembled. I'll call for help. Please." Pulling my phone from my pocket, I flipped it open and tried to call the police. However, before they answered, I began shivering uncontrollably and sputtering to myself as I lost consciousness for the last time. Things were different this time. I didn't wake up in an interrogation room or a prison cell. I didn't relive a part of my friend's life to uncover some hidden meaning. I just stood and watched. I watched myself be born. The pain my mother endured giving birth to me seemed immense, but somehow I could tell her happiness was even greater. With every contraction, she seemed all the more eager to meet me. Unfortunately, she never would, since she died of blood loss once my head was out. I had to be extracted using forceps and placed in incubation while they desperately attempted to save her life. I got to see my dad introduce my infant self to his best friend in the whole world, St. Germain Bucklesworth. Germain vowed that he would help raise me to the best of his ability, which was a promise he had kept to this day. I watched myself learn to walk and talk over the years. Despite being small, I was always eager to explore new places. Ironic, considering how I live my life now, all confined within a limited space. Back then, I wanted to see every room in the manor. Now I don't want to see any of them except mine. I saw myself attending primary school where some French girl stuck bubblegum in my hair. At the time, neither of us spoke fluent English, so we had very little middle ground to communicate. I only saw her a handful of times before she started following me around. We quickly became friends with each other since our English improved tremendously throughout primary ed. I learned her name was Sunny, that she liked frogs and TV. All these years. And I could never remember that we met when she stuck gum in my hair. Even I'll admit that's quite stupid. I watched my father die when I was only 14. Turns out that he was trying to help save a child who was trapped in a burning building. When the building collapsed on him, the roaring flames quickly tore the flesh from his body and cooked him alive. If it weren't for his sacrifice, that child would have died right then and there. How heroic. My happy demeanor quickly spiraled into disillusionment during my father's funeral. The only person who could help me stop crying was my cousin Robert. We started talking more after the funeral and ended up hanging out on Saturdays. I was happy to see Sonny, Robert, and I become good friends since we didn't have any others. We were tight, always tried our best to stick up for each other. On weekends, we'd all hang out together since Robert was usually busy during weekdays. Only a few years later, when I meet Ophelia and Megan, from the outside looking in, I could tell we were all nervous, but somehow we made it work. It was as if we were fated to be together. I had to watch that accursed night of the party where Sonny and I got a little too drunk. I remember when we all graduated secondary ed before Megan did. Ophelia had moved out of Annie Hans at this point, and Megan was so worried that we'd stop hanging out with her. We made it a point to continue hanging out regardless of the situation. Later on, that stopped being a problem since she moved in with Robert. According to him, he couldn't bear living with his father anymore, so he packed up his things and used inheritance money to buy an apartment. Sometimes I forget he still has a father. I remember when Ophelia told me my fate through the stars. Honestly, I didn't believe her much at the time, but now I can say she might have been onto something. Though there was no beer at that party, that didn't stop me from getting drunk that night. I watched as I matured into a young man over the years. We must have partied every other night in university since someone was always hosting. Only reason we ever got invited was because Ophelia sold drugs at the parties. All these people who used to hate her now cling to her for drugs and her looks. She remembers how they treated her before. She always managed to get a little more out of them than they anticipated. Suffice it to say, she gets the last laugh. I watched until the night of the festival. I'll never know what freaked me out so hard that night. But something compelled me to leave. I stumbled back to Sunny's house where she welcomed me in and offered me her bed. I couldn't accept it. Memories of the party in secondary had flooded my brain, and I realized I couldn't trust myself to spend the night with her while drunk. Although it was years ago, I couldn't shake the sight of her unconscious face from my mind. In a desperate attempt to get home, I climbed into my car. Unlike the large roads used for commerce, the actual roads in Fate are quite thin. I took my time. I drove extra cautiously to ensure that nobody would stop me. The tequila in my system made it incredibly hard to stay in my lane, but somehow I managed. I had the radio turned down low as to not distract me while I drove. That's when I saw a car headed straight towards me. Chapter end. I hope you guys are ready for one of the chapters of all time. This is one of my favorite chapters coming up here. So, also, welcome in new joiners. How's everybody doing? Thumbs up. Cool. I hope you guys liked my crazy Simon voice. You're going to be hearing it a bit more. Psychosis is a bitch. Alright. You are my sunshine. I should have died right there. That would have been a happy ending for someone like me. But I fear that what comes next is far worse than I expected. See, all my life, I've never truly had problems. I've been unfathomably privileged in every aspect except my emotional well-being. For some godforsaken reason, I could never be happy, and I didn't know why until I was older. You're just like them, aren't you? Sunny asked me. I opened my eyes to find myself sitting at the table in her kitchen. She stood across from me and looked at me with a scowl. Her eyes pierced through my body like daggers, and I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen her so angry. I can't believe I fucking trusted you, she shouted. You murderer! I didn't fucking murder him, I shouted, snapping out my gaze. I'll bet you've been using your family's powers to manipulate me into believing you. Why do people think that my family has magic powers? I yelled as I slammed my fists on the table and stood up. They are nothing more than manipulative fucks with a fetish for control and power. Just like you, Simon. That one hurt on a different level. My entire body shivered as her words entered my ears and registered in my brain. I was now staring down my best friend from across a wooden kitchen table, trying my best to hold back my emotions. I am not like them, I staggered. I felt a rush of anger swell up inside me, forcing my hands to clench into fists. Yes, you are, she growled, and I'm an idiot for ever trusting you. When have I ever lied to you, Sonny? Secondary ed, after that party. My heart sank into my chest. What the fuck are you talking about? I asked. You said you forgave me.
And you said you never put it in me, she shouted back. But guess who missed 2 fucking periods that month?
I tried to speak up, but nothing came out. Her face grew increasingly red as tears welled up in her eyes.
Dieu merci, they make a pill for that, Simon, she screamed. I have worthless bloodline without another member.
My throat was so tight, I could hardly breathe without opening my mouth. Feelings of anger and disbelief swarmed within my mind. Sonny stormed around the table to me and grabbed my shoulders.
Go on, Simon,
she whispered.
Tell me I'm lying to you.
Sonny, I whispered back.
Look me in my eyes.
I did as told, staring into the clouded brown eyes of the closest person I've ever had in my life.
That did not happen,
I whispered sternly. Before I could register what happened, Sonny's fist struck me right in the jaw. A wild right hook caught me completely off guard and sent my head spiraling. As I grabbed my jaw to make sure it hadn't been dislocated, she struck me again on the back of my head. I felt a stitch on my head pop loose from her fist, which sent my entire body into a blitz of pain. Thrashing out in agony, I elbowed her in the gut and pushed her to the floor. I knew I had to defend myself, but the pain I was in must have made me stronger, since I did not mean to strike her that hard.
Oh, the fucking hurts!
I screeched as I grabbed my head.
Shut the fuck up, you psycho!
She screamed at me with a cough. I forced myself towards her kitchen and dug through the drawers for a knife. Maybe if I got the upper hand, she'd actually calm down and listen to me. If not, then at least I'd have the upper hand in a fight.
Sonny, why are you like this?
I asked as I frantically searched.
I could ask you the same thing,
she yelled as she stood up.
You know what you did, and you gotta lie to your best friend.
What happened next was probably the single worst outcome for a situation where someone has to defend themselves. I grabbed the knife and turned around. As I grabbed the knife and turned around, I extended my arm to brandish the weapon. In that same moment, my best friend in the entire world decided to lunge at me in an attempt to tackle me. Just like when we were younger and I went to slap that mosquito off of her, one of us turning around threw the entire thing off. I stood for a moment, my breathing shaky and my head spinning, before I realized what I'd done. Sure, grabbing a knife was a stupid idea, but I wasn't thinking straight, and now I'd face the consequences of my actions. She'd collapsed almost immediately, causing the knife to slit and cut her even more. I tossed the knife to the side and immediately dropped to my knees beside her. The knife didn't make it very deep in her, but a fair amount of blood began to pool around her as she squirmed in pain. My profuse apologies and clamoring were completely drowned out by her crying, which was ear-splittingly unbearable. Blood was literally pouring from her like a sewage drain, coating my legs in the kitchen. It filled her whole house and began to rise like a bathtub being filled with water. Within mere moments, I completely lost her in the red syrupy ocean before me. I screamed for her as I waded around in the blood, desperately trying to locate her. My head touched the ceiling, and as I realized I couldn't sustain my own weight, and sank within the crimson depths.
You know what you did, and so did she,
the masked man's voice echoed.
Open your eyes. Soon you shall see. Soon you shall see.
I tried to defy him this time, keeping my eyes closed tightly.
Don't play coy, Simon. You know how this ends,
he boomed.
Now relive the life of your friend once again.
Although I was clenching my eyes and desperately trying to swim, I somehow managed to fall asleep right there. I woke up clutching a plush frog and drooling all over myself. Needless to say, I was no longer in my body, but rather in Sonny's. Just like the last time, I had no control over the course of actions that followed. I am merely an observer with a front row seat. The alarm on my phone was the intro theme to an anime I had watched when I was younger, so I let it play for a minute before disabling it. Swinging my legs over me, I threw my body off the bed and landed on my feet. As I got dressed, I watched myself in the mirror. My brown hair was all messy and needed a good brushing this morning. Today was the weekend following the party, yet I still felt weird about the whole thing.
Simon told me that all he did was touch my junk, but I couldn't remember exactly what happened. All I knew is that I was very horny and drunk at the time. I was definitely aggressive that night. I thought to myself as I pulled my panties up. Simon seemed so scared. So a day later, I didn't bother making breakfast after I was dressed. Simon wasn't coming over, and my dad wouldn't be home until next week, which was confirmed by the note he left on the refrigerator. The note was in French, but I'll read it in English just to keep things simple.
Dear Sunshine, please remember to take the trash out on Thursday and try not to eat junk food.
I read aloud.
The laundry should be ready for pickup by Friday. See if your Olympus friend can drive you. When I get home, we can have dinner together. I love you more than anything in the world.
He drew a heart at the bottom of the page, which made me smile. I opened the refrigerator and grabbed some leftover slices of pizza from yesterday's lunch, slapped them in the microwave, and set the timer for a minute. After the beep, I grabbed my pizza and rushed to the kitchen before I could burn my hand. What happened that night had been eating away at Simon. This much I knew. I just wanted to cast it aside and forget about it, but something worried me. The day after the party, I woke up at Simon's manor and found myself extremely sore. My left shoulder was killing me and my right hip hurt. I ended up with a few bruises. It was as if I fell out of a tree or a window directly onto the ground. But what was really concerning was how sore my groin felt. Although some people like to believe otherwise, thanks to those accursed rumors, I'm a virgin. I've touched myself many times, but that night was the first time anyone's touched down there for me. I told Simon Simon told me he only uses fingers, but I feel like he may have gone too deep. Or maybe he just has big fingers. It's really weird to think about, and I struggle to even picture Simon doing something sexual. He's always seemed super shy about the whole thing, and I know he's borderline incapable of talking dirty. Maybe he just didn't know and went too deep? The whole thing's whatever. If I'm to be honest, we were drunk, so we touched each other and kissed. Isn't that what drunk people do? Aside from shouting over each other, that is. I finished my slice of pizza and wiped my hands on my shirt to get the grease off. Glancing at the assorted pill bottles on the table reminded me that I was supposed to take my meds. Personally, I don't understand why I should bother taking medication when I don't see anyone for the day. Plus, it makes me feel so dull, which is not how I'm trying to live my life. Meds have dictated more of my life than I'm comfortable with, so my refusal to take them is justified. My stupid whore mother tried to use them as a way to siphon more money from my dad, all while turning around and selling them on the side. I imagine she probably crushed them up and snorted them as well. She would invite random men to hide with in the very same room my dad now owns. At the time, I was too young to realize what they were actually doing, but as I grew up, I learned that people wear clothes when they wrestle. My mother is not a wrestler. No, she's a dirty cock-sucking whore. I mean the word whore, literally, since a prostitute at least has an inkling of class. This was a woman who left needles out for her daughter to find whenever I was allowed out of my room. I was unhealthy and unhappy, and it was because of her negligence that my father won custody over me in court. Men never win custody here in Fade, so that should speak volumes how bad my mother is. Despite how much I hate my meds, how much I avoid taking them, I know my dad spends good money on them for me. Remember, Sonny, it's just another set of pills to take, I thought to myself as I swallowed them along with some water. Before I knew it, a month and a half passed since the party. Simon finally started easing up again. He's like a turtle. If he feels threatened or uncomfortable, he locks himself away in a protective bubble of depression. Can't say I blame him, since he got too much on his plate to handle at his age. Or so he tells me. Personally, I think he needs to take a big fat chill pill, or rather a chill suppository, and relax sometimes. But his ass is so tight that if you tried to put any chill pill up in there, within a week you'd have a diamond. Although I will admit, he's eased up considerably since we met Megan and Ophelia. A part of me doesn't like Megan very much, if I'm to be honest. She's way too serious and stern on about everything. It's obvious that she's got a huge crush on Robert, though. And anyone with two eyes could see it. But Simon seems happier now that he has friends, so I'm happy as well. Plus, I'll admit, Ophelia's accent's really cute. I made sure to tell her one day while sitting outside a sandwich shop with her and Megan. I'm telling you, Sonny, it ain't cute. She responded as I told her that. It's foreign and weird and I'm trying to get rid of it. Well, I love your accent, I informed her. It's so different. That's what I just said, she mumbled. Foreign and weird. I was right about to respond before Megan interrupted us. So, why aren't Robert and Simon with us again? Megan asked abruptly. They got in the fight, I exclaimed. Robert got into a fight with Simon? She snickered. No. Robert got into a fight and Simon was there. Megan leaned back in her metal chair. Robert would beat Simon's ass any day, she laughed. Simon looks like he's made of tissue paper. They're too close for that, I responded. They're practically brothers. I mean, they are cousins. Isn't that close? I don't know. I never had a cousin before. I bit my croquet madame and watched the birds fly by. Ugh, fuck, Megan sighed. I think it's Shark Week soon. Megan, I am eating, Ophelia responded sternly. I told you, I don't like when you talk about that. Sorry, my bad. Thought we could talk like girls for once. I had swallowed the bite of my sandwich and chimed in. And how do girls talk? I asked. They gossip, you know, Megan exclaimed. They talk about girly things like cute boys, our hair, makeup. Want to do my nails? You only ever talk about one of those things, Ophelia rebutted. Megan scowled and bit her sandwich. So, how do girls talk, Maggie? Ophelia reiterated. Okay, fine, I get it, Megan groaned. Sorry I talked about my period while you're eating. She followed that sentence with something that sounded like German, but I couldn't make out clearly. Ophelia must have understood it, since she gave a clear response in English. Very much so. Very much so. Danke. Come to think of it, I hadn't had my period in a while. Hearing Megan talk about hers so openly was a little odd, but it reminded me of mine. I haven't had one this month, I laughed. Or last month, from what I remember. My laughter wasn't reciprocated, but rather met with looks of concern. But wait, Megan said as she grabbed her stump. You haven't had a period in 2 months? None, I replied. Not even a little. Oh my god, gross, Ophelia mumbled from behind her hair. Megan scowled at me. Holy shit, Sonny, you need to see a doctor, she commanded. That's not healthy. It's whatever, I responded nonchalantly. Periods are gross anyways, and I don't like having them. Nine, you don't understand me. You've been to a party where there was a ton of alcohol and drugs, she explained. You, yourself, told us that you got so messed up you couldn't even remember what happened. You woke up at Simon's Manor, for fuck's sake. What are you suggesting? Something happened at that party, Sonny. I don't want to know, and I don't need to know. But you need to know. Without another word, she fished around her backpack and pulled out something that looked like a plastic-wrapped popsicle. Just promise me you'll try, she asked in a much more comforting tone. What is it? It's one of those new fast-acting pregnancy tests. Don't ask why I have it. Okay, why do you have a pregnancy test? A look of disbelief shot up her face. Maggie stole them from an older girl at Auntie Han's, Ophelia spoke up. Stole those, some perfume, hair ties, toenail clipper, bottle of shampoo, and an earring. I looked at Megan and realized she had a shiny silver ring hanging from her right ear. But why do you have them here? I asked again. Are you the pregnancy test fairy? Here to give pregnancy tests to all the little boys and girls? I'll cave your fucking skull in, Sonny, she grimaced. That was my cue to stop. Okay, thanks for the test, I nodded. You're a good pregnancy test fairy? I couldn't help but laugh a little as she yelled at me. Still, the sheer implication of giving me a pregnancy test and immediately tying it to that party was much more than obvious. Simon had told me he only used his fingers, so I knew I had nothing to worry about. After all, why would he lie to his bestie about something like that? Megan texted me that night to remind me of the test. I kind of just chucked it into the kitchen table when I got home, so I had to track it down if I were to humor her. After a few minutes of not remembering where it was, I found it. I know it's weird having a 15-year-old with one arm give you a pregnancy test and imply something happened at a party, but it's been a while since I peed on anything not made of porcelain, so I decided to give it a shot. Plus, I'll admit, it seemed like fun to do. Spoiler alert, it was not fun. Imagine my horror as the results came back positive. There's absolutely no way that could be correct, and I found myself searching all sorts of conditions for a false positive on my phone. Believe it or not, there's a lot of things that caused a false positive on a pregnancy test. I, however, qualify for exactly 0 of those conditions. It was at this point I started freaking out. There's no way Simon lied to me about this. If he did, he must have been so drunk he didn't actually remember, and therefore it's not a lie. He would never intentionally do Simon like that. I decided to call him to double check. Guten Abend, Sonny, he greeted me as he answered his cell phone. What's so urgent it requires a call at this time? Since I gotta ask you something really important, okay? I responded calmly. Okay. Ask away. You know the party, yeah? Yeah. You didn't, My hands were physically shaking and I couldn't believe what was happening to me. I'm only 16 years old. I shouldn't have to ask my bestie of all people a question like this. You didn't, I mumbled. Put it in? He responded over the phone. Would you hate me if I did? No way. There's no way. He told me he didn't before. Why would he tell me this now? 'Cause I didn't. He finished. My entire body shivered as my heart sank. Why do you, ask? He questioned. Don't worry about it, I responded as I hung up the phone. I felt so cold, so alone, yet I chose to believe my best friend. If he says he didn't, then he didn't, and it's as simple as that. Some semen must have gotten on his fingers or something, and he hadn't realized. That night I barely slept. I was haunted by the realization that inside my body a baby was forming. Although it might have just been my mind playing tricks on me, I began to feel sick to my stomach around lunch. Oddly enough, I felt comfortable around Simon despite the overwhelming desire to keep this from him. Clearly he made a mistake and doesn't realize what he did. I can't fault him for it when we were both to blame. I know I'm not ready for motherhood, so my mind was made up. Although some might feel my choice to be rash or irresponsible, I genuinely don't care. This was my problem, not anyone else's, and it'd soon be over. Once classes let out for the day, I headed to the pharmacy along the way to my house and found myself a solution to this problem. Nobody would ever need to know what happened if I buried this hatchet deep and quickly. I already lied to Megan and told her it came back negative, and I miraculously got my next period that night. Simon asked me numerous times about the phone call, but I just told him I was having a rough time. He immediately offered to comfort me by playing games and watching movies, which I gladly accepted for a later date. As I sat at the kitchen table, I stared into the cup of water I poured for myself. Was I really about to do this? Had the gravity of the situation not really set in yet? Remember, Sonny, it's just another set of pills to take. Chapter end. Okay, so that's one of my favorite chapters. I don't mean to immediately, downplay the emotion by taking a short break here. One of the things here is that it said that she searches up stuff on her phone. In the beginning of this reading, I talked to you guys about how I'm looking back over the manuscript to make an updated second edition of Daydreams that includes some slight fixes and things to be more appropriate to the time. That is an example of one of them. Instead of that, I'll probably change it to her going to the library or something like that. Since at this point, she wouldn't have a cell phone. She would only have a pager.
So she would call from her home phone, things like that. The overall story won't change, though. And if anything, you guys can think of this less as me trying to retroactively fix mistakes and more of me like growing as an author and improving and trying to, well, no, it is fixing mistakes. I'm to blame, but yeah, sorry. I just kind of want to get that out there. I don't know why. The scope of the story has changed since I started writing it. Anyway, so that's one of my favorite chapters. I feel it under my skin. When my vision cleared, I found myself sitting across from Sunny in the kitchen. This time, she was standing and holding a bloodied cloth to her body. I must have been holding an ice pack to my head since it slipped when I let my guard down. I was in my own body again, as indicated by Sunny being across from me. Personally, I hope that's the last time I ever leave my body again. The kitchen was no longer filled with blood, aside from a few drops around Sunny and some blood dripping down my head. After a few tense moments, I spoke up. Sunny, did that just happen? I asked calmly. A lot of things happened, Sims, she spoke. You got to be more specific. It's that thing with the pills, I clarified. Her facial expression sank into one of sadness. You saw that too, huh? She asked. What do you mean saw it? Did it not happen? I questioned her. I saw it from your eyes. I don't know what compelled you to lie like that. Afraid you saw it from my eyes? What do you mean by that? She shrugged a little, keeping her torso tensed up and pressure applied to the knife wound. I'm not even sure anymore, Simon, she sighed. I paused for a moment and took a deep breath. Sonny, I'm sorry, I apologized. I'm sorry I lied to you about what happened that night. I should have stopped myself. I don't even care anymore, she responded in a dull tone. You can lie to me all you want. I'd probably just believe you anyways. I just couldn't live with myself knowing that I took advantage like you. Couldn't live with myself knowing that I took advantage of you like that. Simon, you didn't take advantage, she growled. I forgave you for what you did. I forgave you for... what I didn't forgive you for was lying about it. I paused for a moment and adjusted my ice pack. How long did it take for you to come to that conclusion? I asked. She looked down solemnly. A year or two, she sighed. Once I learned more about how my body works. I didn't even understand that I had a real baby to be in there yet. I was scared. I was so scared. You panicked, didn't you? I asked. I panicked hard, Sims. But I had to keep a straight face. I couldn't let you know. You absolutely could have and should have. You couldn't sleep right for months, and you think telling you would have been the right thing to do. She was right. I was a total train wreck and a half after that night. It lasted for months till I finally stopped having nightmares about it. I was tormented by the truth of what happened and how I decided to lie about it. However, I think I was just scared that she'd realize what happened. Clearly, she thought the same if she kept having to take Plan B from me. Ironic, isn't it? How people will lie to protect the ones they care about. Yet she knew all along. So I kept it a secret, she explained. It's the only secret I ever kept from you. So only? I asked. She sat down in front of me, crossing her legs and leaning forward. I assumed the blood had mostly stopped flowing since she dropped her towel. I never kept secrets from you, Sims, she explained. You've always known about my parents. I'm pretty open about hating my mom. Though, I didn't know this was originally her house, I rebutted. You did. I told you. But you probably just forgot.
I probably did.
You knows I got ADHD. That's probably the most obvious.
I think anyone could figure that out. I chuckled nervously. She adjusted her headband as she kept listing things in a shaky manner.
You know, I basically had to teach myself responsibility, she continued. Truthfully, I know I didn't do a good job, but hey, I'm surviving.
You're doing a great job with that as well, I complimented her with a weak voice.
So maybe this wasn't about me, Sims. Maybe none of it was about us.
What are you suggesting? She climbed to her feet and pointed at me.
Maybe it's you, Simon. You're the one who this is all about, after all, she explained. Sure, Megan, Ophelia, and myself have issues and secrets in our life, but doesn't everyone? Robert handles his own problems quite well for a man who lives in the shadow of your entire sorry-ass bloodline. He doesn't seem to mind, and he's not in the public eye, and you two get along great.
Then she grabbed my arm and tugged on it, giving me the cue to stand up with her. I slowly rose to my feet as she kept talking. As I could, I noticed her brand softly glowing through her tank top.
And that's for me.
She paused for a moment.
Simon, I'm happy. Sure, I'm kind of too open about things, and I don't take my meds sometimes. But I'm happy with that. I'm happy with you as my friend, she continued. I like you for who you are. Not because you're rich or because you're smart or a dweeb or whatever, but because you tolerate me when others don't. And you like being around me, even when I get to be too much to handle. And that means a lot to me.
Her eyes began to get heavier as tears welled up in them. The black color of her tank top could hardly contrast the red glow of the brand as it grew in intensity with every word she spoke.
I just wish that you could understand that you're not a talentless person who will never admit to anything,
she sniffled.
You're already showing huge talent for tolerating me. Most people just think I'm annoying, but you've been here for me when I needed you to be.
Her voice was shaky at this point, and she could barely hold back tears. The red glow from her brand began cutting through her tank top and was becoming hard to look at.
Because I love you, Simon,
she shouted in a burst.
You're my best friend in the whole world. I love you so much. And I can't stand the thought that you hate who you are.
Then she began crying.
Your kindness doesn't come from something you did, Simon, she sobbed. It's something you do every day. Being yourself. You can't keep lying to yourself about who you are.
She threw her arms around me as the red glow consumed the entire room. I couldn't see anything but blinding red lights, but I could feel her embrace. Reciprocating the hug, I wrapped my arms around her as well and closed my eyes. After a few moments, her body dissolved into mine, and I opened my eyes to find myself standing in front of a fire. The red glow that once filled the room now illuminated the night sky with flames as I gazed towards the vehicle. Then I heard the masked man.
This is it, Simon. What do you do? Do you cower like always, or see the job through?
He appeared before me, strumming his bony fingers together. I'm done with this game, I yelled. I'm fucking done! As I stood there, my hands clenched in fists of rage, I stared into the bleeding eye sockets of my own face, worn by the man. You've ruined my life, I screamed. You've ruined my family! You and your stupid curse! He tilted his head down and took on a darker tone.
So you really think this is my fault, oh Simon Olympus of Fade?
He spoke calmly without rhyme. Yes, I answered firmly. I do. You cursed my family to suffer. We could have done great things if you didn't do this to us.
Powers like your family's come at a price, Simon. Surely you can understand that.
But why? Why drag other people into this? Why must you fuck with their lives for your sick little lessons? You made me show compassion to a fucking nonce!
It's not me who's causing them these problems. It's them causing these problems for you. I simply want you and your family to pay for abusing my power.
I don't believe you. You're lying to me from behind the mask of my own face. If you wanted me dead, you would have killed me yourself. The masked man began to laugh a wicked laugh. Sheer anger built up in me from hearing such a snarky and egotistical response from him, and I had to grit my teeth to restrain myself.
That's so ironic coming from you.
He snarled.
Do you really believe what you say? Or have you lied to yourself as well?
Before I could respond, his arm shot out from the roads and grabbed my neck. Similar to the last time he did this, he was able to lift me off the ground with ease. I clawed at his wrist, unable to break free as he looked into my eyes. Then, without a word, he threw me into the dirt. I hacked and coughed as the wind was forced from my lungs. Fire burnt around us, and the smoke made it hard to breathe. I rolled to my side, gasping for air. The masked man slithered to the ground next to me and lowered his head to mine. His entire body contorted in a way that seemed as if he was more spider than human.
You fool, Simon!
He growled as he placed his hand on the side of my head.
You were so close to figuring it all out.
He began to put pressure on my head with his hand, sending a wave of pain through my skull.
You still think this was my fault?
He continued.
Everything I've ever done has been for your family. You still think this was my fault?
I tried to scream, but I couldn't. The pressure of his hand on my skull was beginning to be too much. I felt like my skull could break at any second, shattering like glass. My eyeballs felt like they could pop out of my head from the pressure. Yet at this moment, the only thing I could think of was what Ophelia said on the roof a few years back. I'll do great things, huh? My voice echoed through my head. When will I start doing that? Whenever you stop lying to yourself. Ophelia's voice echoed in response. Throughout the pain, I hadn't realized how close the masked man was to my face. With a surge of strength, I reached over and grabbed his mask, causing him to release the grip on my hand. I tore the mask from his face and threw it behind me. He screeched and covered his exposed face, preventing me from seeing it, but giving me the perfect opportunity to strike him. With my last remaining strength, I shoved his face directly into the ground and climbed onto his back, pinning him to his stomach. Grabbing his head by either side, I began slamming into the ground over and over. With each slam, I'd unleash a bestial scream of agony and rage, refusing to let up. I could feel his neck crackle with every slam, yet I continued with all my might. Gradually, he became less and less resistant, until he gave up entirely and went limp. Once the rush ended, I collapsed off him and gazed up at the stars. For the very first time in a very, very long time, I huffed, I did something for me. The stars seemed dim compared to the bright fire that burned around us. Aggressive crackling of flame soothed in my ears as I breathed. And it felt really, really good to do that. I sighed. After a few moments, I stood up and brushed myself off. Using my foot, I flipped his body over and examined his unmasked face. I can't honestly say I was surprised at what I saw, since in retrospect it made sense. His eyes were cold and calculating, as he stared lifelessly into the night sky. No blood came from his nose, despite it being crunched from my thrashes. No expression of fear on his face at my triumph over him in the last moments of his life. Although what I looked upon was familiar, it was simply something I chose not to recognize. Because he was a curse manifested by generations of believing in ancient rumors and vile traditions. He was a construct of fear and cowardice masquerading as a symbol of power.
I knew this from Robert entering the Olympus Manor, and although it was rumored to bring malice, I believe it was the smartest decision I've ever made. I may not have many friends in this world, but the ones I have I hold very dear. And I wasn't about to let my bloodline dictate what I do. Although I was forced to make a promise at my friend's expense, I decided to break it for Megan's sake. I broke that promise to her father, not because it was beneficial to me, but because it was right for her to know. Because I have pure intentions, even if they aren't always apparent. Hiding behind a mask is one thing, but lying to my friends is another. My life is mine to shape, no matter what happened in the past. Some of us choose to hide our past in hopes of a brighter future, but I have to learn from my mistakes to better myself. I can't live behind a mask and expect my friends to accept me for who I am, since these goals are mutually exclusive. But most importantly, the man who lay dead on the ground in front of me did not believe in himself. His power was fueled entirely by my family's belief of him, and thus he acted as a threat to all they stood for. He might have been a higher power, but without passion behind him, he was destined to fail from the start. My past may not be something I'm proud of. I may have repressed memories, such as the party from secondary ed, but at least I have friends who care for me. At least I have myself. With a surge of confidence, I turned and rushed towards the crashed vehicle. I looked inside to find a man passed out behind the wheel. The flames had almost reached him, and he would die if I didn't act quickly. The car was still in the middle of the road, and I only stood mere feet away from it. Without thinking, I lurched forward and grabbed the door handle. I tried yanking on it, but the car was locked from the inside, and the door wouldn't budge. The fire began to flicker onto the man, taunting me by singeing at his hair. I knew I had to act, but I had no idea what to do. My entire life I've doubted myself and second-guessed every decision I've made. I've never accomplished anything incredible in my life, and the pressure of doing so will stop me from accomplishing anything in the future. But you know what? That's okay. I decided I'm okay with it. Because unlike my family before me, I don't need to do anything incredible right now or ever again. The only thing I needed to do was save this man's life. Pacing around, I almost tripped on a large rock in the mud. With a jolt of inspiration, I grabbed the rock and smashed the window with it. Then I reached inside and opened the door from the inside. After unfastening the seatbelt, I grabbed the man and pulled as hard as I could on him, trying desperately to get him to move. I put all my weight behind myself and fell backwards, but I didn't give up. The fire was beginning to burn the man's arm, so I quickly grabbed on him and pulled. So I grabbed him again and pulled. This time he slid out of the car and on top of me into the mud. I used the mud to help extinguish his arm before dragging him further away from the car. But we didn't make it very far. The car violently erupted, followed by the loudest crash I've ever heard. Fire engulfed the air as gasoline in the car started an explosion. The last thing I saw was the side mirror flying at my face. The next thing I knew, I woke up in the hospital with Sonny and Jermaine. That's all I have to tell. I'm sorry, I said to the interrogator. My eyes had finally adjusted to the light. I could see the officer sitting across from me. He was a burly man, type Megan likes to draw, with a thick beard. Well, Simon, after all these months, I appreciate your cooperation, he responded. As it turns out, Quincy has already given his testimony, so once we compare stories, we'll continue from there. The officer stood up and left the room. I gazed at all the pictures and evidence on the table strewn out for questioning purposes. Completely forgot the officer got me a soda to drink earlier, and now it was room temperature. Only my right hand was handcuffed to the chair, so I was able to grab the soda and take a nice big sip of it. I was pretty thirsty from all the talking. Making sure to avoid the sutures, I scratched my head, since it was incredibly itchy still. Between my hand, my chest, and my head, I had some gnarly scars. However, by this point, my hair had grown quite long and shaggy, covering the scar on my head. After about an hour of reading and rereading the nutrition facts on the soda can, the officer returned and removed my handcuffs. I was quite surprised and asked him why.
Well, Simon, you're a free man, he informed me. Quincy's story checks out. He doesn't remember a thing aside from you saving him. That man was so drunk, it's a wonder he remembered that. Fate, he was drunk that night? I asked. Yes, sir. If I remember your toxicology report, you were as well, which is why you'll be losing your license for a while. But they'll sort that out with you later this week. We walked down the hallway to the main lobby, where I was allowed to leave. As I stepped outside, I saw none other than Saint Germain waiting for me in a limo. After 7 grueling months of interrogation, I guess I'm finally free. Chapter end. I'm sorry, I gotta chug some water. I'm not tired, I just keep having to yawn. I like this chapter coming up here. It has one of my favorite scenes, depending upon who I'm telling, if you finish the book or not. If you haven't finished it, this is my this next chapter has my favorite scene. If you have finished it, you already probably know what my favorite scene is. I like how jumbled up Simon's story gets at that point. That was intentional, by the way. It's intentionally done to be confusing. Oh, forgive me, I can't stop yawning. I might want to try adjusting my monitor so I can stand and read. I feel like that would help. I'm gonna try this. Let's see if this works. Let me. Sorry. Reading out loud is very difficult. All right. I'm sorry, for I have sinned. Months passed and the protests calmed down. I was finally out of the public eye and had been laying low for the most part. Even my friends weren't aware that I had been released. A press statement was made by Germain saying that he refused to answer any questions about my incarceration. Originally, I thought it was a stupid idea, but looking back on it, it gave me plenty of time to reflect. Believe me when I tell you I had a lot to reflect upon. Most of the time was spent recovering, both physically and mentally. I still had all my scars, among a plethora of other issues. But according to our family doctor, I made great progress, despite having to walk with a cane. My plan was to remain in hiding a little longer. At least until I could walk without the cane again. I really didn't want to be seen in public, so I spent my days exploring the manor. However, tonight was a special night. Our secondary ed reunion, and everyone would be there. The music was loud and the lights were flashy. People flooded the entire 7th floor of the building, where the party was being hosted. I could hardly fit through the crowd without bumping into someone, but by this point in the party they were too drunk to notice. No sign of Robert, Megan, or Ophelia. I made my way through the crowd of partygoers until I reached the screened glass doors leading to the outer balcony. Somewhere deep in my heart, I knew she would be out here. And sure enough, she was. She already didn't like wearing a dress, but tonight was a formal occasion, so it was to be demanded. A simple white dress, complete with frilly gown and lace straps, covered up her leggings and ratty shoes. She always refused to wear any form of dress shoes. Away from the loud noises and blaring music, she stood outside the screen doors, leaning on a balcony railing. Smoke blew from her mouth as she stared off into the city, watching the nightlife take place. Although I could only see the back of her head, I knew she wasn't smiling. The moon seemed to illuminate her pink hair, which hung down to her shoulders. It was the first time in years that I'd seen her hair down out in public, and it gave me a sense of the months that had passed. After building up the strength, I pushed the sliding glass door open. Laissez-moi tranquille, she groaned. What now, Ophelia? I said nothing and slowly slid the door closed behind me, trapping the roaring music within. With a soft clack of my cane, I began to approach her. Somehow she seemed irritable, which was very unlike the Sunny I remember.
I already told you I don't give a shit about these people, she continued. They're not our friends, and I don't want to dance with them. Trying to be sly, I decided to speak up. Then perhaps you dance with me, I suggested. With a gasp, she spun around faster than I'd ever seen someone spin. Her eyes lit up like the stars in the night sky as she saw me standing before her after all this time. Before I could open my mouth again to greet her, she threw her entire body onto mine, wrapping her arms around me. I dropped my cane and returned the hug. She held me tight and buried her head into my shoulder. I thought you left me, she spoke into my chest. You remember what Ophelia said? We're inseparable, I reminded her. She pulled away from me, and I watched as her face lit up with a smile. I slowly grasped her hand with mine and pulled myself close to her body. Then I wrapped my other arm around her and began swaying from side to side. It was obvious that she didn't know how to dance, but I didn't care. I'm sorry, Sonny. I apologized. I'm sorry that I lied to you. It's okay, Simon, she reassured me. I'm just glad you're okay. I lied to the police for so long that I honestly forgot what it was like to be innocent. I knew it. I knew you never killed that man. Quite the opposite, actually, I explained. His family sees me as a hero. They've visited the manor a few times to thank me in person. You never called. I took a deep breath and sighed. I couldn't bring myself to face you, I told her. Not after what happened. That cut ran into my ribs, Simon, she mumbled. I know. I'm sorry. She kept trying her best to follow my rhythm, but remained silent. I'm sorry that I lied to myself. I spoke as I released her. I walked to the edge of the balcony and looked down at the streets below. They were completely empty aside from a few cars that were parked on the sidewalk from the partygoers. My whole life I lied to myself, I continued. About every little part of me. Kept telling myself I was different. But that's simply not true. The cool winds blew through my hair, tickling the scar on my head. I should have died that night, Sonny. My life should have ended right there, I stated solemnly. But I was offered a choice between my life and his. You picked his, didn't you? She asked calmly. Nine. I chose mine. I held my palm up. Oh no, I'm going to adjust the mic a little bit. Sorry. I held my palm over the balcony and gazed upon my scar. I would have died in a cell, I sighed. So I did what I could to prevent that from ever happening. You did a good thing, she responded. Maybe. But I'm just like all the others who came before me. I could barely finish my sentence without my chest tightening up. She walked to my side and leaned on the balcony railing, wrapping an arm around me in the process. Non, Simon, you're nothing like your family, she said as she turned her head to face me. I looked over at her as she finished her sentence. You're better. Then she closed her eyes and gave me a big smile. With a heavy heart, I tried my best to smile back. I missed seeing her smile. I loved seeing her smile. But that's not what really happened. Once again, I ask, have you ever told a lie? I have. If I lied to my best friend about that night, would it be unreasonable of me to lie to you? See, I've been lying since the beginning, changing the story to make myself seem more sympathetic, intentionally leaving out and altering events to fit the narrative I desired. But I fear the guilt has finally caught up with me. If I'm to ever repent for my actions, then I must tell the rest of the story as it happened. No more hiding the truth to make a point. The truth is that I am guilty on all accounts. I caused the car accident that murdered Quincy Shosbeck on the night of the festival. He was not drunk, and I was not found innocent. Although I did attempt to save him from the wreckage, he died in the hospital a few weeks later. I was to be imprisoned for my crime, where I would rot in a cell, haunted by the cruel decisions I'd made. My choices to lie were mine alone, as I lied not only to law enforcement, but my friends as well. Yet I did not intend to spend the rest of my natural-born life in a cell. Almost immediately, I began working on recovering my freedom. Due to my status, I was able to ensure that every lunch I would be allowed one visitor. This visitor was allowed to stay and talk to me for 30 minutes under specialized supervision and behind a glass restraint. This guest was Saint Germain. We plotted and schemed, ensuring the guards overheard our every mention of my family's wealth and power. The same wealth and power that allows the anomaly that is Fade to exist would be our leverage to get me out of here. One at a time, news outlets were silenced and forced to rescind their stories of Quincy's murder. Threats of bankruptcy were levied against the outlets, along with licenses being revoked and other dirty legal tricks. Nobody was safe from us. Bigger organizations were targeted as well. The very police force that imprisoned me receives funding from the Olympus family, which was miraculously cut short when I was found guilty. Budget cuts made the staff diminish in size to where only a fraction of the original forces remained. Within a week, they knew they had to bargain with us. I'm sure expunging my criminal record and allowing me my freedom was a fair trade in return for the... I'm sure expunging my criminal record and allowing me my freedom was a fairer trade for the return of their funds. Once I was freed, I spared no expense of my family's fortune burying my case and ensuring it would never again be brought to light. Quincy's family was bribed and ended up leaving the city in a higher economic standing than they could ever imagine. When I told Sonny they visited me in person to thank me, I left out what they were thanking me for. Hopefully that will make up for me taking his life. Yet he is gone, and I am allowed to walk away from the situation with my freedom. I would, without a single doubt, be vilified by my own city for my actions should they ever be revealed to the public. So I kept my head down and stayed away from the public eye for months. Even my friends didn't know about my incarceration at this point, since details had become so muddled. But what was the point anymore? Sure, I was a free man. But to what extent? I had to use my family's power, the very thing I hate, to get away with murder. Isolating myself from my friends and living alone in a large manner was horrible. Yet I couldn't risk showing my face in public. At the end of the day, I am no better than those I hated. There was only one thing left for me to do. I finished with Sonny as previously stated. After some hollow reassurance, she closed her eyes and gave me a big smile. With a heavy heart, I tried my best to smile back. I knew I would miss seeing her smile, but now I had the closure I needed. Tentatively, I turned my back on her and left the party as well. Heading back into the hallway of the complex, my heart thumped harder with every step. My cane clacked against the ground, and countless thoughts filled my head as I hobbled towards the stairwell to exit the building. However, this time, my exit was up. After climbing to the highest floor, I emerged on the roof and placed my cane on the ground near the door. The wind quietly howled in my ears as I slowly approached the end of my journey. I placed one foot on the knee-high wall and hoisted myself upright to face the city streets below. I am Simon Alexandria Olympus of Fade, the last remaining member of the almighty and powerful Olympus family. Yet all my life, I wanted to just be Simon. Simon, the guy down the road. Simon, the faceless man in the crowd. Just Simon. I hate my family and their disgusting grip they have on this city. The sheer fact alone that I have the opportunity to stand atop this building proves that their power could not be controlled. Yet I used said power myself.
The blood in my body boiled with anger and hatred at what I'd become. I looked out across the night sky and scowled as the eyes of my ancestors illuminated the path before me. Hundreds of little eyeballs gazed down on me, eagerly awaiting for me to join them on our family throne. The winds picked up, roaring and howling in my ears. A serenade of my ancestors' voices beckoned me forward to take the step in joining them. I heard all their voices so clearly, as if each one was speaking directly to me. I heard your voice as well, Father. At this moment, I stand atop Mount Olympus itself, and I can honestly say, there were never any gods up here. With fists clenched, I closed my watery eyes and exhaled slowly, ready to finish the job, ready to free myself from the morbid clutches of my family's curse. After all my suffering, I could finally be free. But unfortunately, death would have to wait. As I began to extend my leg forward, something wrapped around my body and yanked me back off the ledge. I fell flat onto my back and slowly opened my eyes to find myself staring at the moon. It would have hurt, but I didn't care anymore. Don't you ever fucking try that again, a familiar voice snarled. Without moving my body, I calmly turned my head to match the direction of the voice. The tears in my eyes made it hard to see, but there was no doubt about it. Laying on her side next to me was none other than Sunny Ravelacian. "Do you hear me, Gunas?" she screamed. "Don't you ever do that shit again?" I said nothing, but turned to continue watching the moon in the sky. Because I was below the knee-high wall, the wind couldn't reach me, and the only sounds I could hear were Sunny's heavy breathing and the whirring of air conditioning units. "You're lucky I made it in time," she huffed. "Am I?" I responded weakly. "How did you even know I was up here?" "You said it yourself. We're inseparable, like Ophelia said." I rolled my eyes and groaned. "There's nothing for me, Sonny," I explained. "I have nothing left to live for." "Then that is exactly why you can't die yet," she responded sternly. My God, I groaned again, rolling my eyes. Slowly but surely, I stood up and sat on the ledge, facing towards the inside of the building rather than towards the streets. After a moment, she got up and sat across from me on an air conditioning unit. Much to my chagrin, she was smart not to wear dress shoes, or else she wouldn't have made it up the stairs in time to catch me. Her face was dripping with tears, and it was causing the tiny amount of makeup she wore to run. Sonny, my story ends here," I reiterated. "I've caused too much damage to the people I cared about." "I'm sure we'll get over it," she responded. "Together. With you. I believe in you, Sims." I looked her dead in the eyes. "After I lied to your face about knowingly taking advantage of you that night?" I asked. She nodded assuredly. "After I lied to my friends about my innocence involving the murder of another man," I continued. "Pardon me. That was an accident," she stated. "That was not an accident. I willingly drove that night." "I choose to believe it was. Just like I choose to believe you." More tears began to well up in my eyes as she said this, yet I couldn't help but laugh. "You're so fucking manipulated by me," I stammered through my emotional laughter. "By my family's power to You think you can believe me now?
None, Simon, she spoke sternly.
I get to pick what I want to believe. And I believe that both of those nights were accidents. I believe you had never intentionally hurt me or anyone else.
I felt my face fill with tears as I burst out crying in front of her.
You fucking idiot!
I began to scream as I bawled my eyes out. I clamped my hands around my face and screamed into them like a child. Tears and a bit of snot soaked my palms as I cried the most disgusting and heaviest cry I'd ever had. While crying, I slipped down the ledge of the half wall and onto my butt. After a moment, I felt her embrace me, wrapping her arms around me from the side. My head fell onto her shoulder, and I reached out to embrace her as well.
Why? Why couldn't you just let me die?
I managed to squeak out through the crying. She gently stroked my head, running her fingers through my hair and letting me cry as much as I needed.
My family is supposed to die.
I cried.
The Olympus family was to end with me.
After about a minute passed before she spoke up. Because you're not an Olympus to me, she told me. I sobbed. You're Sims. My best friend, she explained. That's all you'll ever be. Is that not enough? With shaky breathing, I rested my hand on her shoulder and hugged her tightly. I tried to wipe my face, but I think I just ended up getting tears and snot on her dress. Somehow, I don't think she minded. But now I know why Olympus die young. I will have to live my life shrouded by the guilt of murder and manipulation of my friends, forced to reconcile with the fact that no matter how hard I tried, no matter how much I wanted to avoid it, I am exactly the same as those who came before me. Death would have been too good of an ending for the likes of me, had I not been talked down that night. Yet even to this day, my pleas for death have either been ignored or interrupted. Chapter end. I love that part. And I think my favorite part of that part is when people get to it and they see that scene of him up on the rooftops and they go, oh, I'm only 196 pages in. There's still like a whole, like, 2/5 left of the story. There's still more. A lot more, actually. So let's begin. Legends came before us. However, something interesting that I remember about that night was that I distinctively heard my father's voice. He beckoned me from the rooftops as if he were standing with me. It was so clear compared to the other ancestors. I was only 14 years old when he died. The fire seared his skin and tore his flesh from the bone. When I saw my life flash before my eyes, the sight of him stumbling from the burning building and collapsing on the ground in front of the crowd was vividly ingrained in my mind. He used his own body to shield the child from the fire, but by the time they were outside, he was already dead. I never got to say goodbye. Within 2 weeks, a funeral was being held, and I was wearing my best suit. It was as black as the abyss and as valuable as a human life. Perfectly hemmed pants gently hugged my legs and hovered over my Prada Oxford shoes. A bow tie squeezed my neck under the collar of my button-down shirt. My hair was short and slicked back. Standing motionless, I watched as the casket was lowered into the loamy earth soil. Ornate and regal, it was embossed with depictions of cherubs to help guide his soul to the afterlife. The richest mahogany wood in all of France would be his eternal resting place. I did not cry. To my right stood my butler, St. Germain Bucklesworth. He was adorned head to toe in black as well. His hand rested on my shoulder, lending me just enough of his comfort to help me get through this. The entire city of Fade was in pain from his death, and the sky wept for him. Umbrellas masked the indistinguishable faces of fat cats and savvy entrepreneurs, none of whom I cared to know. They stood behind a divider, roughly 10 feet behind us. Naturally, we would be the only ones near the casket. As the priest finished his grandiose speech about life and death, he approached me and asked if I had any last words to say to him. "I'm sorry, Father," was all I had to say. My voice cracked and I broke down momentarily, but managed to regain composure. I wasn't allowed to show vulnerability in front of the masses. The priest gave a final word and blessed the casket as it finished lowering. He dictated that we take a moment of silence in my father's honor. Not a soul dared utter a single word. After what felt like an eternity, the crowd began to disperse, doubtlessly eager to get themselves out of the rain. Now that the formalities had finished, most of them had no reason to stick around anyway. All I needed in this moment was to keep my composure for a little longer. Once I felt that enough of the crowd was gone, I took a single step forward and collapsed to my knees. Tears rolled down my cheeks as I cried into the silk handkerchief I held to my face. My butler nearly stood behind me to help obscure my grieving from the public. After allowing me to cry for a little while, Jermaine suggested we find a seat as to not dirty my expensive suit. He escorted me to a pavilion and sat me at a small table with a white cloth draped over it. A singular chrysanthemum rested in a small vase in the middle of the table. He left me for a moment, but quickly returned with a glass of water for me and sat across the table. I tried to steady my shaky breathing enough to sip it, but ended up just gripping the glass firmly instead. "Danke, Jermaine," I sniffled.
"Always, Master Simon," he responded. "You are okay to cry now. There is nobody watching."
"A little late for that."
"I am aware. Forgive me, Master Simon."
Why? Why can't I cry around people?" I asked as I rubbed tears from my face. "I love my father. Is it so wrong to mourn his death?"
"Not at all, Master Simon," Germain agreed. "However, as members of the highest class, your father's father requested that you not cry in public."
"Higher, lower class. I think people should still be allowed to cry when they're sad." I wiped my runny nose with a handkerchief. "You really agree with Demetrius that we shouldn't cry?" I asked.
"It does not matter what I think, Master Simon," he answered. "I merely follow the orders I'm given."
He leaned forward and adjusted my bow tie, which had become askew from my crying and shifting.
"That includes taking care of you, Master Simon," he smiled.
"Danke, Jermaine," I sighed. "I think I'm done crying for now. Run out of tears for a bit."
"That's a sign of dehydration, meaning you should try to drink more of your water."
"I know. Again, I appreciate it."
"While you do, there's important business that I must attend to. I trust you will be fine alone?"
"Yeah, I will." He stood up, took a bow, and left me alone with my thoughts. I managed to drink more of the water, but couldn't stop sniffling and wiping my eyes. The only thing I could think of was my father. After only a few minutes, Germain returned to check up on me.
"Master Simon, I have someone who keeps requesting to meet you," he informed me.
"What? Now? 9. I don't want to meet anyone," I argued. "This is probably the first time to meet some shill."
"This is no shill, but another grieving individual who would like a word with you."
"Probably some insurance guy or so-called family friend, trying to get something from me. They only grieved since my father was loved by many. I refuse."
"They are roughly your age, Master Simon. I suggest you hear them out."
I sighed and hung my head down, then gestured to Germain. Clearly there was no convincing him otherwise, since he deemed this individual so important that they weren't seeing me in my current state. So much for following the orders he's given. Using the clean side of the handkerchief, I wiped my face down in an attempt to appear more presentable. By the time I finished, a young man sat in front of me. He was definitely young, seeming to be somewhere between 1 or 2 years my junior. His golden hair was slicked back as well, and he only seemed slightly longer than mine. I could tell he came from upper class based on his suit, which made me suspicious of his intentions. Ich bedauere deinen Verlust, he spoke assuredly. I'm sorry for your loss. German is my native tongue. You need not translate what you say. I insisted in German. That makes things easier. I'll just speak in German for now. I squinted at him. For the sake of consistency, I'll continue in English. Truly, I am sorry, though. He continued in German. I lost my mother this year, so I understand what you are going through. Then you have my condolences as well, I apologized. However, you clearly don't know my father. You're far too young. Well, that is true. I've never even met him. Then why attend his funeral? Are you the son of some businessman who wishes to get in close with the Olympus family? Absolutely not. My family has no interest in working with yours. I'm just offering my sympathy, since you looked like you needed it. I lowered my guard a little, but remained weary. Then I'll ask again. Why attend his funeral in the first place? I repeated. To pay respects to my uncle. My heart sank deeper into my chest for a moment. Your uncle? I stuttered. Yeah, Xavier is, or was, my uncle, the boy explained. I'm here with my father, who is very broken up about his passing. What was your mother's name? Rosalind. She was Xavier's sister, I believe. What is your name? Robert Elias Rayburn. We opted to drop the Olympus name. I shook my head in bewilderment from what he told me. My father never told me his sister was married, yet alone married to a Rayburn of all things. This entire time I was under the assumption that the Rayburns hated us for the consistent slandering of their name. Yet here one is, at my father's funeral. Worst of all, he seemed sincere about what he told me. I'm Simon, I quickly responded. Simon Olympus. You're not here for any fortune, are you? Nine. And I don't need money, and I certainly don't want any of yours, he shrugged. I just wanted to meet you. I can leave now if you want. As he started to get up from his seat, I felt an overwhelming sense of loneliness wash over me. Wait, I burst. You don't have to go. I thought you'd want to be alone, he questioned. I'm okay with giving you some privacy. Nine, actually, I really don't want to be alone right now. He rested back in his seat again. I've always felt alone, I explained. And now that he's gone, I know I'm alone. Nah, you're not alone. Don't you have friends to help comfort you in times like these? There's an annoying Frenchie that follows me around at school. She doesn't speak German and her English is pretty bad. Is she your friend? I think so. She keeps trying to talk to me. She thought my name was Simmons. Well, I could be your friend as well. I looked directly at him. Oh, Rayburn, I gasped. Friends with me? Isn't that forbidden? Those traditions are stupid, Robert scoffed. Please tell me you don't actually believe in them. I don't want to. Then don't. It's as simple as that. If our fathers could be friends, there's no reason we can't. He stood up and extended his hand. I immediately noticed his nails were painted black. Right, I laughed as I shook his hand. With a smile, he sat back down and ran his fingers through his hair. You paint your nails? I asked tentatively. Yeah, I've been painting them for months now, he explained. I used black since I felt it appropriate for a funeral. Isn't that what women do? Paint their nails? I see no reason why I couldn't paint mine, regardless of what women do. Can I see them? He nodded and extended his hand. It appeared softer than a boy's hand should be, as if he used some sort of moisturizer or lotion on it. My mother used to paint them for me, he explained. I kept painting them myself once she passed away. Tears began to well up in my eyes again as I thought of my father. Robert must have taken notice because he quickly tried to cheer me up. Hey, don't cry, cousin, he smiled. Here, I know how to take your mind off things. Without another word, he got up from the table and ran off. I wiped my face on my suit sleeve and blew my nose into my handkerchief again. Though I'd probably ruined the suit itself, I didn't care anymore. None of these formalities mattered to me anyways. They've all been instilled in me by my father under the guise that he didn't want me to end up unhappy like he was when growing up. Well, news flash, Dad, I was and I still am. Before I could wallow in more sorrow, Robert returned and slammed a small bottle on the table. He grabbed my hand and removed the cap from the bottle, revealing a small brush. What are you doing? I sobbed. Cheering you up, he gleamed. You like my nails, so I'm gonna do yours. I yanked my hand away from him. I said no such thing, I burst. I think they're girly. Black isn't a girly color, he retorted. Metal bands and rock stars wear black nail polish. Fuck it. Paint them. Holding my palms steady with one hand, he painted my nails with astounding precision. The brush smoothly coated every inch of each nail in a glossy black coating that was as dark as the night sky. Lightly blow on them, he commanded as he grabbed my other hand. I did as I was told, allowing him to finish the rest of my nails. As he did, I stopped blowing on my fingers and held my hand up to see how shiny my nails were. To this day, it's hard to think that something as simple as nail polish helped create such a positive memory on such a depressing day. Because when I think back, that's the thing I recall most clearly. Meeting Robert. Not the droves of people in their crocodile tears, not how hard I bawled my eyes out when I was allowed to, and certainly not all the people who offered me their hollow condolences. It was so long ago, and yet still so vivid in my mind. As I lay here now, I wonder, would anyone even attend my funeral? Chapter end, by the way. So Robert actually has one of my favorite voices to do, by the way. I really like speaking in this voice for some reason. If any of you have ever seen the show Metal Family, if you've heard how Dee speaks in the English dub of it, imagine that, but instead of Russian, it's German. For her, the bell tolls. I peeled the mask from my eyes and rested it on my forehead. My room was built at an angle with a large glass viewing port which allowed me to look at the stars. However, that also allowed a lot of natural moonlight into my room, so I usually sleep with an eye mask. Laying in my king-size bed, I held my hand up and looked at my nails in the darkness of night. They were dull and uninteresting, overshadowed by the scar tissue of that malignant brand that reaches from my inner palm to the middle of the top of my hand. The source of all my ails, resting lazily on my dominant hand, is a disgusting reminder of this mess I've gotten myself into. I put that hand down and looked down at my other arm. It was neatly bandaged and cozily fastened with gauze before I took a shower earlier. However, after I left the shower, I didn't bother rebandaging it. Truthfully, I wanted the wound to breathe a little, since it had mostly healed over the past month. Part of me doesn't think I have to tell you what the wound is, or why I have another identical one just barely above it on my wrist. But the phrase, "the third time's a charm," didn't seem to hold true with me, and at this point I genuinely don't believe I'll find peace. It's been a year since my first attempt on the rooftops, 7 months since my second with a knife, and as I stated earlier, a month since my last with a pair of scissors. Every time I try, someone seems to find me in just the nick of time. Looking past my wrist towards the corner of my room, I could faintly see Saint Germain sleeping in a chair. Ever since my recent attempt at ending my suffering, he'd been keeping a close eye on me, which included ensuring that I fell asleep peacefully at night. Sometimes he'd even read books from the cellar to me and while I laid in bed. Many of them didn't make much sense, and many more of them were completely illegible from either water damage or sloppy handwriting. Germain must have passed out in the middle of tonight's story. I haven't left the manor in over a year, or a year and roughly 9 months if you include the isolation I subjected myself to after my incarceration. Aside from hospital visits, the only time I even step outside the manor is to walk the manor grounds or visit the marsh behind it. Guilt for my actions kept me locked away from the rest of the world, and nothing I could do would ever undo what I did. With heavy eyes, I fell back to sleep, reliving my father's funeral for the umpteenth time. The next morning came quickly. Before I knew it, I was sitting on the floor of the shower, examining the scars on my wrist. The warm water battered my body and ran through my hair, which had grown long and shaggy over the past year. All the blades and scissors had been removed from the manor since my second attempt, and with my most recent one I found that even my electric razor went missing. Fog obscured the glass enclosure around me, making me feel trapped within this steaming box. Although my shower is quite large and could probably fit at least 12 of me comfortably inside, the feeling of claustrophobia never left me from the 7 months I spent in a cell. While incarcerated, I often sat in the middle of the room or away from any walls, just like how I'm sitting right now. My legs were crossed and my legs were crossed, and between my legs was the drain, confirming I was in the perfect center of the shower. I usually spend an hour here when I wake up and an hour before bed just to allow myself to soak my scars in the steam. All my wounds ache, but the worst is the one on my head, and only the warmth of the shower seems to calm it down. Ironically, the one that hurts the least is the brand. I never did learn what the red glow was, or why I seemingly collected it from Megan or Robert. I never learned why Ophelia didn't have a brand, or why identical cuts formed on both of us. I never learned why Sonny's brand turned out to be the wound that I caused when Robert and Megan's situations were unrelated. Or when Megan and Robert's were unrelated. But most perplexingly, I never learned why I relived Ophelia and Sonny's lives as them, or if they relived my life. It's maddening, I assure you, to have all these factors in play with not much understanding of how they were connected. However, soon I'd find that I don't like the answers I'd receive. After I was content and in a better mindset, I stood up and turned off the shower, then dried myself off with a towel. I slipped on my fancy maroon robe and brushed my teeth in the mirror. As per usual, my reflection decided it would be fun to play tricks on me, such as watching me intently, when it should be brushing its teeth along with me. It freaked me out the first few times, but truthfully, I'm over it. It doesn't do anything but watch me, so I'm not exactly scared of it. Is it unsettling that my reflection is judging me? Yes. Have I seen scarier shit in the past 2 years? Also yes. Is it all in my head in the times I've shown Jermaine my mirror he's seen nothing irregular? Absolutely. I finished with my toiletries and headed back to my room to get dressed. Once I was fully clothed, I headed down the hallway to the main entrance I headed down the hall to the main entrance of the manor and followed the hallway further towards the kitchen. Inside the kitchen, I began to make myself something to eat for breakfast. Well, actually, it's lunch, since it's late afternoon, but it's breakfast to me. So I poured some cereal into a bowl. I overheard Jermaine approaching the kitchen. "Why, of course," his voice echoed. "I can prepare you something to eat while you wait." When he entered the kitchen, I wasn't surprised to find out that he wasn't alone, and I was even less surprised to find out who he was talking to. Besides, Saint Germain was none other than Sonny Rabelaisian, who is, somehow, against all conceivable metrics, still my best friend. She was holding her arm, which had a little bit of blood on it for some reason. "Ah, Master Simon, you're already up and at 'em," he addressed me. "Miss Rabelaisian cut herself on some glass, and I was just on my way to get her a bandage and a snack while she waited for you to be up." I handed Jermaine a bandage from the first aid kit near where the knives were supposed to be. "Guten Tag, Sonny," I greeted her. "How'd you cut yourself?" "I was knocking for like 30 minutes and there was no answer," she explained. "So I tried climbing into one of the broken windows and I slipped a little." "Sonny, that's horribly dangerous. Promise me you won't do that again." "I do it all the time. The doorbell hasn't worked in months." Jermaine finished wiping the blood from her arm and began applying the bandage. "I sincerely apologize for the inconvenience," Jermaine apologized. "Unfortunately, we haven't been able to repair the manor as well as we used to. Ever since Simon's accident, we've been losing workers left and right. I will assign someone to repair the doorbell and see that it is fixed by tomorrow." "I guess they weren't as loyal to my family as they led on to believe," I agreed as I poured milk onto my cereal. "Indeed, they were offered a lot to stay. However, only a handful did." "It doesn't matter anyways." It doesn't matter. This manor shouldn't be standing anyways. Jermaine finished with Sunny and pulled a seat from the counter for her. Then he told Sunny to keep me company and took his leave. Sunny hasn't changed much in the past year. She's still as energetic as an overcharged battery and shines brighter than the stars themselves. No matter what, she refused to leave me alone. No matter how often I reminded Jermaine not to let her in the manor. She would ring the doorbell for hours until finally I would cave and answer it myself. After a month of my stubbornness failing me, I told Jermaine to finally start letting her in. She came to visit me every single day without fail. Even on days that she was sick, she'd show up to pester me and sometimes even spend the night. My other friends gave up after Jermaine told them to go away, so I have to admire her persistence. Actually, I have to be the luckiest person alive to have a friend like her. After what I did to her, I don't deserve someone as compassionate in my life. Hey, Simth, you still look like a caveman, she said as she sat down across from me. You said that every day this month, I retorted. You still look like a dork. Oui, but I'm a dork who doesn't look like I just climbed out of a cave. There's no point in getting a haircut. I have no reason to leave this place and subject myself to the judgment of others. Getting a haircut is reason enough. Fresh air is good for you, and I wanted to buy you this new flavor of fizz that tastes like cheese. Cheese-flavored fizz. That sounds absolutely vile. I simply must taste it. Sunny held her finger up to me. Only if you come with me to buy it, she demanded. I want you out of this manor. I can't go outside all... I can't go... I go out... I'm sorry. I go outside all the time with you, I corrected her. I just don't leave the manor grounds. Which is some pussy shit, Simon. Fate has changed so much in the past year, and you're locked away here because you're sad. I'm locked away here because I'm a monster. You're a monsieur, not a monster. For the 100th time, the people of Fate do not hate you. Most of them forgot what you did after a few months. Because they don't know what happened. They know what I wanted them to know, which was nothing. Sunny folded her arms and made a pouty face. Okay, Monsieur Monster, she pouted. Then if you won't leave your dungeon, then how's about I cut myself on more glass as I try to leave? What? Why would you do that? I asked. I can just let you out the front door. No, you can't, because monsters cannot open doors. They most certainly can. Why do you think boss rooms in video games have locks on the doors? To lock travelers like me out, but it won't work because I'm thin enough to fit through your windows. Well, to be fair, we have large windows. You'd be hard-pressed to find someone who can't fit through them. I just don't want you to cut yourself again. Ha! Gotcha! She beamed. What? What'd you get? I asked in shock. A monster wouldn't care if someone cuts themselves, she explained as she leaned over the counter. A monster would if it was their best friend, I retorted as I leaned towards her. Real monsters don't have friends. A monster can have friends from before they became A monster can have friends from before they became a monster, but they'd lose them or push them away. I tried to push you away. You kept coming back. Because I knew that you weren't a monster. But I am a monster! Then why do you care if I cut myself? At this moment, I realized we were both practically folded over the counter. I slipped back onto my seat and took a bite out of my cereal, frustrated with Sunny's persistence. You're not a monster, Simon, she reiterated. You're just depressed. It is depressing, I admitted. And it doesn't help that I've been having the same damn dream for the past month. That's because all the hair on your head is tangling all the bad thoughts and stopping the good ones from making it through your brain. I looked at her in bewilderment. That's not how hair works at all, I blurted. I think it's a sign of something. I just don't know what. I think you're just overthinking things like usual, she rebutted. A few mistakes aren't going to ruin your life. A few mistakes? Sonny, I killed a man! I got away with murder! She quickly looked away and rubbed her bandage. Well, I mean, she mumbled, it doesn't make you a monster. It was an accident. You said so yourself. I could tell it was hurting her, so I decided to back down a bit. You're right. I Probably I'm just overthinking or something. I resigned as I took a bite of the cereal. It's this isolation you put yourself in, she spoke up. It's putting the bad thoughts where the good ones should be. I looked at the scars on my wrist. She was right, and I hated it. Withering away in this accursed manner is fine for me, but clearly it's beginning to affect my friend as well. Sunny had never injured herself climbing into the manor before, at least not to my knowledge, and the fact that she even still comes around to try and convince me to leave should be reason enough. I couldn't help but feel like I didn't deserve to leave the manor, as if I were caged inside it for the atrocities I've committed. No matter how much information was suppressed, I'm sure the public knew about what I did. Yet, I decided to go anyway. Alright, Sunny, I conceded. I'll get a haircut. Sunny practically jumped off her stool to run around the counter and hug me. Before I knew it, I was putting my shoes on and ready to step out into the world once more. End chapter. Okay, hello everybody. I'm dying. I need a snack. I need water. I need a lot of things. I need to walk around. Give me a moment. We're going to have a short break. Okay? I'm going to grab a Cliff Bar. Man, I was very much like switching between the accents. You are very right. It is actually hard. I sit there and I practice it sometimes, like especially when I write. Actually, interesting thing is when I write, I usually speak aloud. This is something that I found I clearly didn't do when I started writing Daydreams, but did more as I went on. I would actually like literally talk out loud, like typing it. And especially with dialogue, I would do that. So if a character is speaking, if I'm writing it, I would literally write like, all right, Sunny, I conceded, I'll go get a haircut. Just to see if it felt natural for them to say. All right, let me read some of the chat. Let's see what we got here. Y'all be trying to make me laugh while I'm reading, by the way. I saw the, like, when Simon's fighting the masked man, and they hit him with the Totsukeki! And, like, we need a Simon Study Teenage Parents AU for real. Someone read it. Actually, crazy chapter. Yeah, one of the things about Daydreams is that I feel it really takes, like, a dip after I'm Sorry for I've Sinned and becomes a bit more tame again. Most stories have, like, they follow a structure, you know, they get the rising action, climax, following action, like conclusion, stuff like that. Daydreams is just like a fucking roller coaster. It just like, it builds up and there's like some bumps and stuff and crazy turns and then woo, you know. And then it chills out for a bit as it builds up speed and then woo. And I like that. I look back on, I'm a part of like a lot of writing subreddits and stuff. And I see people talk about like how to write a proper story. And I think that it's important that what I say next does not come across as, like, please don't think this is egotistical at all. Everyone thinks that what they're making is amazing and all that and stuff. And I'm very, very proud of Daydreams. But I didn't want Daydreams to be a conventional story. There are rules to writing. There are stuff. But at the same time, I think that you don't necessarily need to follow all of them. You know? I think that following rules too closely can lead to your story being formulaic. But at the same time, it can also make it seem professional. I don't know how I come across with Daydreams. I've always been very, very worried that my story isn't professional. That if somebody, like a huge book nerd, were to like pick it up and read it, they'd be like, this is just terrible. Compared to, like, terrible formatting, terrible font, like, breaks all these rules and stuff.
So I've tried to make, or at least tried to ensure that Daydreams has a compelling enough story, especially like later on stuff, that it's worth your time. I know that it starts off slow. Believe me, I do. And man, I got hit in the face with that really, really hard when rereading the first half of it. And man, like, but I think that, like good things, a lot of good things come from effort put in. So, if people are willing to stick with Daydreams, all I can do is hope that it's worth their time and that their effort with my book is rewarded. Also, we're officially past the point that I can say it. So, originally Daydreams, well, not originally, but Daydreams is weird for one very key reason. You are not supposed to know that it is a psychological thriller going in. You, or at least when I was writing it, that was my intention. You are really supposed to think about it as a coming of age tale of a troubled character. High school drama, haha. Oh no, they went to the party, haha. You weren't supposed to know that, like, that it had these twists of there being a masked man and stuff like that, and it being this whole psycho thriller. And I like that. I very much do. The sequel is a bit more, puts the absurdity a bit more on the forefront, but that's because the cat's out of the bag at this point. Everyone knows that Daydreams is a psychological thriller and has a lot of elements of cosmic and eldritch horror. I mean, Simon throws, like, sometimes I personally forget that Simon throws hands with an eldritch horror. Really remember that about this guy. This dude beats the shit out of like an eldritch, an abomination. So, this is all going to be recorded. So, some poor soul is going to be like working in Blender or something. I see you. What's up? 2.7 is my favorite. And I know. And they're going to get to this point and they're just going to be like, okay, when does he stop talking and go back to reading? I was really invested in that. The Simon beat Goku. I think Goku could, like, flick Simon and his entire body would, like, just fold up like a crumpled sheet of paper and then get shot out of like a straw, like a spit wad. So no, Simon does not beat Goku. That does remind me, though, at the end of the last reading, whenever that is, I am going to do a Q&A. Like, relatively serious Q&A, because it's going to be recorded, but I really want to, I feel like that'd be fun. Just one moment. Finishing the clip art. Alright. Next chapter. The world wants a sweet... Messed up right there, right in the beginning. Ladies and gentlemen, Jake. This is why I write and don't speak. Because I'm bad at that. Alright. The world, once asleep, has awoken. Much has changed in Fade since I last remembered it. The once luxurious garden that surrounded the manor had withered away and died, leaving only brambles and weeds in its place. Entire windows in the manor itself were boarded shut, and many parts of the exterior had been vandalized. Graffiti coated the outside of the manor, branding the structure itself with terms such as murderer and devil being plastered in French. Trash littered the grounds near the front gate, doubtlessly from a riot or protest that took place at some point. The few remaining workers must have been too focused on running the manor itself to bother with cleaning the exterior. The air felt stale and clouds dampened the sky, blocking out the sun. Everything was soaking wet from the seemingly never-ending rain that Fade had been getting recently. The protests died down quickly, I told Sunny. Our refusal to comment on them led the story to a very uninteresting conclusion. People have moved on, she added. I remember seeing the riots while you were locked away. And yet, here I am. Sunny speed-walked in front of me and opened the gate. My heart beat heavily in my chest as I approached the exit of my safety and stared out at the city sprawling below the hill. You know, Sims, I have a saying that might help a little. Sunny spoke up. I didn't respond, paralyzed by nervousness. Après la pluie vient le soleil. She smiled. Repeat it back to me. Après la pluie vient le soleil, I mumbled. After the rain comes the sun. So that means I go after you. Before I could react, she bumped into me, pushing me past the threshold of the gate. Now the sun comes with the rain, she gleamed. We're gonna get Monsieur Rain a haircut and a bottle of cheese-flavored fizz. I think I can do this, I replied. I think I need this. We walked alongside each other along the winding road that led down from the manor to the city below. The walk itself takes about 10 minutes since the hill is so steep and the path isn't a straight one. If we could just walk straight down the hill, it would only take about 5 minutes max. Fate has always been tightly knit, yet seeing it from the manor and being within it feel like two entirely different worlds. From the manor, Alsace looks like a weird cluster of urban living, yet in the streets of it, one can rarely see the meshing of From the manor, Alsace looks like a weird cluster of urban living, yet in the streets of it, one can really see the meshing of German and French culture. Even the architecture of the building seems like the two put aside their differences and constructed them together. But Fade was different from how I remembered it. There's something off about the streets now, as if everyone was on edge at all times. It felt like there was more trash strewn about, which was strange since littering was historically never a problem in Fade. But the worst feeling all came from the eyes of everyone we crossed. They knew who I was. There's no doubt about it. Even with my disheveled appearance, everyone who we passed knew that I was Simon Olympus, the man who murdered Quincy. I felt their judgment radiate onto me from their glaring eyes and clenched fists. They were ready to attack me. Sonny, we're not safe, I whispered. These people, they know what I did. They're glaring at us. They're not glaring at us, silly, she responded. They're not even looking at us. Then why do I feel their eyes piercing my body? It's on your head. Was it? I genuinely couldn't tell. My mirror watches me brush my teeth, so there's no doubt my mind messes with me. But I could risk feigning ignorance when there were riots in the But could I risk feigning ignorance when there were riots at the manor I live in? What if someone decided to lash out and attack us? I can't fight worth shit, let alone defend Sonny. I could sense their anger and resentment, yet I pressed forward, guided by Sonny leading the way. After a few minutes of walking, Sonny stopped abruptly in front of a public washroom. What's wrong? I asked. Is everything okay? I have to pee really badly, she stated, pointing to the women's washroom door. I'll be back in 5 minutes. I looked around nervously and grabbed her wrist, careful as to not touch the bandage where she cut herself. She turned to look at me and merely pointed at the washroom even harder. Something interesting about Fade is that sometimes the public washrooms are unisex here.
This was not one of those times. Sonny, I don't want to be out here alone, I contested. The salon is only a little further. Let's just go there. But Sims, I don't think I'll make it, she protested. Here, I'll check and see if there's anyone inside. If not, just come in through the stall or something. And stand in front of you while you pee. Are you mad? Wait, it'll be like that one time we got locked in the closet together at that party and I had to pee in a bottle. Oh my god, why did you remind me? It was dark in there and I could barely hear over the music, but what I could hear was so gross. Blah. Just close your eyes and ears. Nine, just come with me. She began bouncing up and down. Sims, I'm gonna pee myself if you don't let me go, she whined. Okay, fine, I conceded. I let go of her wrists and crossed my arms aggressively. She held her hand up and gestured with a 5 before slamming her body through the washroom door. For a moment, I considered following her, but decided not to. Standing outside, I tried to rationalize my thoughts. Sunday was right. There was no way everyone was looking at me. No way they actually knew what I did, right? I mean, sure, it was broadcast to all of France, but we had it taken down within a month. People really remember? When I checked my watch to see that 5 minutes had passed. When I looked up, 2 large men approached me. My body tensed up and I tried to turn and walk away. Then I felt one grab me. My body practically froze in my chest as a terrible chill rained down my body. I tensed up for a moment before realizing what was about to happen. Immediately I went to yell, but my mouth was gagged shut by a cloth from behind. Sonny was wrong. I knew it. People really are out to get me and I shouldn't have listened to her. I kicked and thrashed, but I was no match for them. Although I'm tall, they were somehow bigger than me, and easily much stronger. Strength had never been something that I had on my side, and I spent the last year rotting away, so I must have been like driftwood to them. People shouted at them from the sidelines, yet nobody stopped up to help. Over 40 people must have witnessed this happen. They covered my face with a cloth bag, and I felt myself being thrown into the back seat of a car. When I tried to reach up and grab the back, my arms were pulled behind me and zip-tied. Could these be vigilante police officers? There's no way, right? Panicking, I tried to make as much noise as I could, but it didn't seem to matter. I was pushed in further, and I heard the door shut behind me. The least they could have done was sit me right up before they started driving. Where could they be taking me? Are they going to kill me? Oh my God. Where could they be taking me? Are they going to kill me to get revenge for Quincy? Are they undercover police officers like in the movies? Tons of terrible thoughts ran through my head as I bumped around in the seat. Clearly, they didn't appreciate me squirming, since one of them felt the need to hit me in the shoulder. It hurt badly enough to make me stop for a second and whimper. Hey, don't hit him! One of the men spoke in French. She wanted them to be in one piece, not in pieces. He scuffed my new shoes, fighting back, the other responded. I had to rough him up a little. She wanted to notice. She? Who is this she they were talking about? All I could do was breathe. My whole body was in shock, and I had to focus all my energy on keeping my cool. Loud rhythmic thumping filled my ears as I inhaled and exhaled to the best of my ability. The rag tied around my jaw made it hard for air to get through, but I wasn't in enough control of my body to breathe through my nose. After a bit, my senses returned to normal, and I regained composure. Just in time as well, since the car slowed to a halt and the men exited the vehicle. Only a moment passed before I was being yanked upright and forced to blindly follow them. I couldn't tell where I was, only that I was inside. They made me take a seat on what felt like a metal folding chair before handcuffing me to it and cutting the zip ties loose. I was done for. There's no way these weren't some sort of vigilante police hell-bent on getting revenge on the Olympus family for my transgressions. I gently tugged on the handcuffs to see how much leeway I had, but stopped as soon as I heard the door open from behind me. The sound of footsteps, accompanied by a soft metal clacking, like that of a ball in a cup, approached me from behind. I squirmed a little in my less than comfortable seating arrangement, nervously shifting as the sounds moved to my side, then passed me entirely. As they did, I noticed the scent of a very recognizable perfume. There's no way, I thought to myself. They circled to my front and stopped in front of me. After an incredibly tense few moments of silence, they spoke aloud in German. I specifically requested He be handled with care, they said abruptly. Get that cloth out of his mouth and the bag off of his head this instant. Wait, I recognize that voice. I almost gagged as one of the men untied the cloth, allowing me to finally spit out the terrible taste that accompanied it. As I hacked, the bag was yanked off my head, and I was looking straight at the groin of Ophelia Brown. Ciel Nocturne Italy is a very recognizable scent, I coughed. I remember you used to... Before I could finish, she slapped me across the face. A loud smack echoed in the room and caused my ears to ring. It stung like a bitch, and I physically recoiled from the shock. Then she grabbed my cheeks, and I felt her lips lock onto mine. She kissed me for a solid 5 seconds before finally releasing me. Ouch! I sputtered. What the hell was that for? The smack was for ignoring me for so long, she explained in English, and the kiss was for surviving long enough for me to see you again. She turned away from me before I could see her face and sat in a rolling chair, behind a large wooden desk that faced away from me. Her long blonde hair hung down further than I remember, curling a bit on the sides and retaining a wavy shape. You're an easy man to find, Simon, she stated. Just not an easy one to kidnap. Why kidnap me in the first place? I asked. Why not text me like a rational human being? Without turning around, she placed her phone on the wooden desk. I did, she explained sternly. A lot. You ignored every single one of my texts for a whole year. You're right. I'm sorry, I admitted. Truthfully, I don't even look at my phone anymore. I don't even think it's been charged in months. I looked around the room. It was a very small room and was illuminated by a single light bulb that hung from above us. The walls were concrete and dull, except for a few corkboards as sheets of paper stapled to them. There was not a single window or door aside from the one I was brought in through. So why did you need to kidnap me again? I asked. She spun around in her chair, allowing me to see her face. The splotches of vitiligo had become more prominent and defined, yet somehow she was even prettier than I remembered. Around her neck was a golden cowbell on a chain. Because I need to speak with you, she informed me. And I'm not about to risk something as high profile as breaking into the Olympus Manor. Truthfully, there's not much need to break anything. The whole manor's been worn down. Still, it's much easier to tell my men to kidnap some German boy hanging out with a pink-haired girl. Is Sonny's hair still pink, by the way? For the most part. That's really the directions you gave them. Initially. But I had to get creative once they brought back the wrong guy. She pulled a sheet of paper from her desk and held it up to me. A copy of my mugshot from a few years ago was printed onto it. Well, I showed him this, she explained. But you look so much different now. How the hell did you get that? I asked. Tell me right now. I have my ways. Just like you have yours. She winked at me playfully and I squinted back at her. What do you mean? I asked tentatively. Simon, you got arrested for vehicular manslaughter and you aren't rotting behind bars, she reminded me. Now, how does a man like you get out of a situation like that? What are you implying? So I got away with murder? If that's what you're calling it. Who are you to ask me something like that? I yelled. I haven't seen you in years, and you send your goons to kidnap me? My goons are my strongest asset, she informed me. Well, aside from you, that is. Me? What use could someone like me be to you? She pushed her chair around her desk and rolled over to me. Her chair was fancier than anything in the room, aside from the desk, and felt terribly out of place. Because clearly you're above the law, she whispered into my ear. I physically recoiled from her words, scooting my chair away from her a little. Above the law? I burst. You have no idea of what you're talking about. Quincy was drunk as well, and the accident was a no-lo. Is that the final version of your story? She replied sarcastically. Or when you lied to my face, was that just you getting carried away in your own little narrative?
Chills ran up and down my spine, causing the hair on my arms to stand upright. I didn't lie, I reiterated. Quincy was... Before I could speak, her hand shot out and slapped my face. Scheiße! Ah! I yelled in pain. What do you know? I know everything I need to know, she informed me. And I know the rules of this city don't apply to you. I did terrible things, Ophelia. No, Simon, you did wonderful things. I ruined our justice system. You gave me everything I needed. She stood up and snapped her fingers. One of the goons that kidnapped me approached and removed my handcuffs, freeing me from the chair. Personally, I think I could have just stood up with the chair, but I definitely wouldn't have been able to get far. Follow me, Siggy, she gleamed. I'll show you the consequences of your actions. Hail to the king. Nervously, I followed behind her down a long hallway that was lined with doors. I don't remember the walk being this long when I was brought in, so I assume we must have entered close to the room that we were in. The cowbell clacked with every step we took. As I trailed behind her, I noticed a black holster with a real gun on it strapped to her thigh. Ophelia, how did you get that gun? I asked cautiously. Very simply, she responded. I asked for it, and it was given to me. How do you get the scars on your wrist? You already know the answer. Don't torment me any further. I still have the one on my chest, you know. As do I. She stopped in front of a door and removed a ring of keys from her belt. I stood motionless while she fiddled with the plethora of keys, trying to remember which one would open the door. After a few moments, the door clicked and opened. Please, no flash photography, she joked. Not that you even have a phone with you. As I stepped into the room, I was blown away by what I saw. I was standing in an entire indoor packaging facility complete with pallets of packaged drugs. Workers wearing matching uniforms tirelessly filled small baggies with God knows what. A cute image of a cartoon cowhead was branded on the backs of all the uniforms. What the fuck is all of this? I asked in sheer awe. Just a little bit of entrepreneurial payoff, Ophelia chuckled playfully. Who knew selling drugs could be so lucrative? What are you selling? What are you plaguing the city with? Oh, Siggy, we hardly sell within Fade. Only 11% of our profits come from Alsace, with a total of 35% being within France. I turned my eyes widened in horror as I realized what she meant. I turned and grabbed her by the shoulders, gripping her arms tightly. Her guard stepped towards me, anticipating the worst. What are you selling? I demanded. Oh, nothing too crazy, she scoffed. Mostly marijuana and tobacco products, but we also sell mushrooms and other herbal treats. I pushed away from her and crossed my arms. This is deplorable, I blurted. How have you not been caught? This place is huge. She approached me with an aura of confidence. Although we were about the same height, I felt like she towered over me. All of this is your doing, Simon, she explained. When Olympus quit funding the police here, my business surged. I was just a lowly drug dealer, but I was offered something way more. So I took it. Do you even know what building you're standing in? I stuttered, unable to form the right words to reply. You're in an old shipping facility, which was once used for importing and exporting goods from the rest of Europe, she continued. All of our goods come from outside of France, get sent here. We package them up, label them all nice like. The brand is what the important thing here, Simon. Why would you tell me this? Why would you show me this? Because I need you, Simon Olympus. I stepped away from her. You want me to help you as this? I yelled. 9. Absolutely not. This is horrible. Please understand that we are not the bad guys here, she calmly assured me. Fate has been crumbling and we're simply trying to keep its commerce well and alive. Through drugs? That's absurd. We're doing this to survive. Please, at least hear my reasoning, okay?
I don't need an answer immediately, but I've known you for so long, and you're the only person who can help me with this.
Took a deep breath to calm down. The air was musky and reeked of weed. Okay, I resigned.
What was it? Or what is it? What's so important that it warrants kidnapping me? A handful of my men have been arrested, okay? She sighed. Good, honest men who are trying to make a living to feed their families. Since the police are limited in number, we are planning an assault, but we really don't want to have to kill anyone.
Not killing people is a start. Keep going.
We know how fate operates, she continued. If you use your family's influence, I'm sure we can negotiate their release.
But we've already returned their funding in exchange for clearing my record. Are you suggesting I rescind my offer with them?
I don't know how you do it, but I know that we would be forever indebted to you if you did.
This isn't a decision I can just make. It took Jermaine and I months to pull it off the first time.
She gently grabbed my branded hand and caressed it lightly. Siggy, you don't have to make that happen immediately, she informed me. I had my goons, as you call them, drive you home and you can think it over. I already sent a text to Sunny explaining where you were.
Oh, God. I was worried about her. I sighed in relief. She probably thought I ditched her.
I had to go digging to find her number again. Haven't talked to her in a year. But anyway, just think it over, all right?
All right, I will. But I do have one last question.
What you want to know?
What's up with the cowbell?
She smiled and stepped away before striking a cutesy pose. Cowgirls concoctions, she exclaimed. We got the stuff that'll make you moo.
That's your brand? I scoffed.
Don't you go forgetting it now.
I sighed and asked to be returned to my manor. Initially, her goons wanted to gag me and handcuff me again, but she insisted that I wouldn't resist. Still, they couldn't risk revealing exactly where this facility was located, so they put a bag over my head. The entire car ride, I remained silent. I doubt Ophelia has the forces necessary to take down an entire police force, regardless of how limited they were. A year is definitely long enough that the police were able to recover, and her men being arrested was proof of that. Their goons had bulletproof vests and handguns for kidnapping me, so it's reasonable to assume they had more equipment at the ready. And why should I care? No blood will be spilled on my hands from any of this. Ophelia clearly knows about what I did, but how? How did she get any of that information anyway? What does it matter if she knows when I've already had my record cleared? I have bigger issues in my life than her little drug ring. Her men half dropped me off, half kicked me out in front of the manor before speeding off. As I entered the manor, I sighed. I knew leaving the manor would only bring problems, but I didn't know how out of control things had gotten since I shut myself in. I locked myself in my room once again and curled up on my bed. Before I knew it, I dozed off, only to be awoken a few hours later. When I woke up, I found myself fully clothed on my bed with a dry throat. Since I wasn't entirely ready for sleep yet, I decided to head to the kitchen for a drink. The sun had just barely set, and my clock said it was late, yet I didn't even seem to remember falling asleep. When I stepped through the regal arch that led to the kitchen, my jaw almost hit the floor in astonishment. Before me was a man lazily slouching at the countertops, as if the meal he ordered at a fancy restaurant was over 2 hours late. He wore a white button-down shirt with long sleeves that were rolled up above his elbows. A black tie hung loosely from his neck, and what appeared to be a black sports coat draped over his slumped shoulders. His golden hair appeared windblown, as if he'd finished riding a motorcycle with no helmet. He had eyes that were as red as an open wound. What the fuck is this?
I asked, picking my jaw up off the draw. I asked, picking my jaw up.
What the fuck is this?
I asked, picking my jaw up off the floor.
Whoa. Language, buddy?
He responded with a voice as smooth as peanut butter.
You shouldn't use words like that.
I stared in revulsion at the sheer arrogance of the way he spoke to me. My hands naturally clenched into fists as I tensed up.
You can't be real, I stammered, struggling to find the right words. Clearly, I'm completely mad, and I've reached the point of outright absurdity.
Tell me, what's more absurd? Me sitting before you, or you vomiting up a woman's hand?
He replied. How did you know about that?
Simply put, I know everything I need to, and nothing I don't.
I tensed up a little. If you know everything, then why did you only now decide to come speak with me? I asked sternly.
'Cause I'm running out of power, bud.
He shrugged.
Thought I might as well come use the last of it for something worthwhile. Been trying to reach you for a few months now.
Worthwhile? As if being part of my life wasn't worthwhile?
I couldn't just be there for you all the time. That's not how this works.
Then explain how this works. I stepped forward and sat across from him at the counter. He sighed, and I could tell I wasn't about to get any answers.
I'm waiting,
I said in an aggressive manner.
I can't explain, Simon, he surrendered. I don't know how it works either. I just know that it does. I can't be here for long either. Every second drains just a little more of me.
That's the first sincere thing you've said to me.
Then this'll be the next. You need to work with that Rayburn kid. Find a way to stop our blood from running thin.
He shifted a little, but made no attempt to seem any more formal.
See, I quite enjoyed these powers and the wondrous good we can do with them.
He smirked. Wondrous good? I shouted. You delusional, dead, arrogant asshole! These so-called powers you speak of are nothing more than influence and greed. They bring nothing but malice, and you are delusional if you think otherwise.
Delusional? Me?
He reckoned.
You're the one raising your voice to your dear deceased father.
My blood boiled in my body as an overwhelming anger swelled up within me. You aren't even real, I shouted. Your part is this curse. Just like the mirrors, you're fucking with me. I closed my eyes since historically that has helped deal with these psychotic episodes that manifest themselves before me. Light shifting and my breathing were the only sounds that I heard before I was tapped on the head.
Come on, buddy. I know you're smarter than that, he stated calmly. Open your eyes and embrace our power. I'm sure you'll find it quite wonderful.
Fuck off and disappear already, I commanded.
All right, I will. Just think about what I said, okay? Work with the Rayburn kid, search for my room for a wooden cigar box with our family crest on it.
I didn't respond, but didn't outright shut his suggestion down either. Clearly, he knew something I didn't about my situation, and finding a stupid MacGuffin would help. Not to mention I haven't seen Robert in a while.
All right, buddy. It was nice seeing you.
He spoke up.
You've grown so tall since I last saw you. Quick shave, a haircut. Who knows? Maybe our blood is the only thing our family has working for us.
He chuckled, and I heard his stool scoot back, followed by footsteps leaving the room.
Auf Wiedersehen,
he said as he left. When I opened my eyes, a sigh of relief. Merely looking at his smug face was aggravating after all these years. Why now? Why couldn't he have come to console me when I needed him? Why wouldn't he show himself when I tried to take my own life? I heard him beckon me off that rooftop. The answer is simple, because he only cares about the power our family possesses, and now that it's threatened, he sees reason to visit. It took me far too long to figure this out for myself, but now that I have, I refuse to be his play toy. Then I hatched a devious idea. I will go seek out Robert and bring him back here, but I won't be using him to stop our family power from running out. No. With Robert's help, I'll find the source of my family's power and destroy it once and for all. We'll find what causes this damnable curse, and I'll be able to rid myself of the horrors it brings. I began to chuckle to myself, with glee as I thought of how nice it would be to rebuild my life. My chuckling turned into laughter as I headed up the stairs to my room. As I reached the top, I felt my maniacal rage peak and took a moment to shout to my father. "Oh, yes!" I beckoned. "I'll find Robert. I'll be a good little son, Father. I'll play your little game." I violently danced atop the steps, growing louder and angrier. "Will that make you happy?" I yelled. "What if there is no power, huh? What if there is no you?" I grabbed the portrait of him that hung next to the mural above the staircase and pulled it off the wall. "You're not real, Father," I yelled. "You're just a delusion. You're just a hallucination. You are not real." I swung the portrait and threw it into the lobby, then laughed as it crashed into the door and broke. "You are not real, Savior, and neither is this fucking power!" I screamed at the top of my lungs. "This is madness and a reverie. I'm dreaming this twisted tale." Then I stormed down the hallway to my room, continuing my tirade as I went. "I am dreaming a nightmare," I finished, "trapped within the walls of the cell, for I am still in prison for killing Quincy." Slamming the door to my room, I prepared myself for bed, eager to begin my newfound journey in the morning. Before I fell asleep, I dug my phone out of my nightstand, plugged it into the charger. I hadn't touched it in a year now, so seeing it light up was a relief. I didn't bother checking my texts. Those are issues I'd rather worry about in the morning. Throwing myself onto my bed, I stared out at the stars. They seemed to stare back at me like usual, albeit with a bit of hope this time. For the first time in years, I eagerly anticipated waking up rather than dreading it. If I was only following the instructions of my dead father. Even if I was only following the instructions of my dead father, if they could lead me to the cause of this nightmare, then why wouldn't I obey? Chapter end. I'm struggling at this point. Coincidences. Do I keep going? How long have I been going for is the real question. Oh, crap, I forgot that close. Okay, I've been going for like 3 hours, 31 minutes. Damn, I like this chapter too. It's a little bit like longer of one though. Dude could make a killing. Does my voice actually like sound good ASMR? Because like, isn't ASMR exclusively reserved for like girls though? Like, who wants to listen to a guy talk to them? I don't know if I should keep going or not. You know, it's 5:31. I am going tonight to have dinner with my family. If you've made it this far, I thank you very, very much. I really sincerely do. I don't have much else to say. Next Saturday, I'll do the next. Is that the fire alarm? I thought I just heard our fire alarm go. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. Next Saturday, I'll do the final live reading. So yeah, that's really all I got. If you guys would share the live readings with your friends, anybody that doesn't like to read, I have read the story to you, so they don't have to anymore. That's really part of the reason that I was doing this. Plus, I thought it'd be fun. Thank you, everybody, for continuing to support me. I really, really appreciate it. And, yeah, that's kind of all I got. Any questions, actually, before we end? Any questions about, like, the story or anything? Anything that you guys want to know? You do a good Morgan Freeman. Master Simon. Get the e-boyness on the last reading.
Dude, the YouTube interface for like streaming is so weird. It like, how much milk can Ophelia produce? I'm glad that that question will forever be on here. Somebody is someone like much more professional who's not used to our weird unorthodox community is going to see that and be like, what the hell? I don't know, man. You can never have enough milk. That's the real thing. You can never ever have enough. And I already read it. I'm just looking up to you reading Time in a Bottle. That is my favorite chapter in the entire book. All right. Thank you very much for everybody tuning in. I am Jake Nicroy, reading Daydreams. So, yeah, I'm just going to end, I guess. If you guys enjoyed, then please drop a like. I'm trying to, like, upload stuff onto the YouTube channel, like, if I ever do streams again. So, subscribe and comment this. Like, subscribe, comment this video. Oh, enter my gift card giveaway that's not real. Oh. Alright. Have a great one, everybody. Thank you for still believing in me.